across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and it's 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. Great to have your company, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or in your connected device. Thank you again for joining us. If you do miss anything from the show, you missed anything from the show the last couple of days, go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing how supermarkets may be asked by the government to freeze the prices of essential goods to help people cope with the impact of the Iran war. Even though, of course, the reason why prices are going up and got these issues is because of fuel costs going up, because we're being uniquely impacted, as all of the international bodies are saying, because of the government's insane net zero policies. This really is madness. Now, a government minister has gone out on telly rather unconvincingly to say, no, they've got no plans for compulsory price caps, but didn't completely deny that they hadn't had a conversation with the supermarkets, because let's face it, those are the supermarket bosses just going around making this stuff up, that they were asking supermarkets to do that. But isn't the market already delivering that in terms of the price cuts that you do see in the supermarket on essential goods as a way of getting you in the supermarket? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Also, going to be talking about Andy Burnham, as we've just been discussing with Mark there. He's being challenged as to whether he or not he still believes, because his comments he made back in 2022, which I think he did back up again in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling last April on what is a woman, you know, what we always thought it was until 10 minutes ago. But whether or not he still believes biological men can use female toilets, and if people should be able to self-declare their gender. Also, members of the grooming gangs inquiry have pledged not to ignore the ethnicity of offenders, as other agencies have in the past. This is something they'd already promised previously. And HS2, as we discovered from that statement yesterday from the Transport Secretary, could now cost up to £103 billion. Heidi, the Transport Secretary, vowed to deliver the project to completion. Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, we are a joke country. Interestingly, the government today is announcing they're going to basically scale back on the right to judicial review by all the people just trying to stop any kind of, any kind whatsoever of infrastructure project going ahead. I, for one, actually think that's probably a good thing. About time we actually start building some things in this country. Whether HS2 is the right thing or not is another matter entirely. I'd love to hear your thoughts, in particular on supermarkets. Maybe asked, were asked, not told, not compulsory, but could you please help us out here, government, says the government, to freeze the prices of essential goods to help with the cost of living? What's your reaction to that? Good idea? Bad idea? Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us, of course, on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, as you well know, and text costs one standard network rate message. Delighted to say Claire Pearsall, as always on a Wednesday, joined us, former Conservative Government Advisor. Morning.
Morning.
You're always happy on a day we've got PMQs, yes, aren't you?
Yeah, politics is back.
I love a PMQs. You've never seen anyone. I mean, literally, this is your drug. You know, those people who go, yeah, on a desert island, I get to have the Bible, William Shakespeare. I get to have videos of PMQs every Wednesday. Would be Claire's number one.
It's such a sad existence, but absolutely true. Can't deny that, I'm afraid.
Well, there you are then. I mean, at least she's honest.
Yeah.
Right, let's talk about, when I get to Andy Burnham in this Makerfield by-election, is there anything that Andy Burnham hasn't said in the past that isn't going to come back to haunt him? Supermarkets may be asked to freeze prices of milk, eggs and bread. If you're on one of those those diets, those sort of meat and veggie diets, that's not so good for you, is it? It's basically, we're told that the Treasury has been in discussions with supermarkets about incentivising them, so not compulsory, incentivising them to agree to freeze prices in exchange. They've said for things like, we'll make life a bit easier for you on other things like regulations on packaging, which puts up the costs for supermarkets, and what healthy food how much healthy food you have to sell and where things have to be in aisles, all that sort of stuff. Proposals, we're told, are at an early stage. Supermarkets obviously do want to know. They were invited into a meeting with the government. Loads of the supermarket bosses just didn't turn up because they're not even playing. Government, a Treasury Minister today, rather unconvincingly, this is Dan Tomlinson, who's a Treasury Minister, rather unconvincingly, he has said that this isn't something that we're looking at. That's one of those non-denial, not denials. Come on. Where did everyone get the idea that the problem is supermarkets are just selling goods at too high a price? We have the most incredibly competitive supermarket.
Yeah.
I mean, and the stat that most people just do not get, they're making huge profits, supermarkets. They are, because they're huge. And you walk down the street and there are 5 different supermarkets. They're everywhere and they compete with each other. And they make a lot of profit because we buy a lot of food, OK? That's why. Their profit margin is like 4%.
Yeah.
They're not like selling a tin of baked beans for 80p and they're making 40p on it. They're making 4% on it.
I know that, but people don't see that. They see the profits being posted and just assume that they're all raking it in. But the cost of having the stores where they are, the cost of transporting goods around the country is enormous. Staffing costs, which are ever increasing.
Freezer compartments.
Absolutely. So the electricity costs, the gas costs, all of these things have to be taken into account. And these stores are absolutely massive. There's a couple near me, which are sort of warehouse level.
Yeah.
Shopping centres, and you just think, how much does this cost to keep running from 7 in the morning till 10 or 11 at night? It is absolutely huge. So it's not the fault of the supermarkets. We have more competition now in the food area than we ever had before.
Yeah.
And the government's just going to kill that dead.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. No matter where you live, I mean, realistically, unless you live, I mean, literally in the middle of nowhere, and there's one little corner store and the family store, and they're like, do you know what? You are going to pay more. And by the way, you're going to pay more in a corner shop where they're open 24 hours a day because you're paying for that privilege and that extra facility. It is quite, I mean, genuinely, I think quite absurd for them to have suggested this, but it doesn't surprise me. And they're trying to row back on it, and they're not saying it would be compulsory because, I mean, they've just criticised John Swinney, who's just become the latest First Minister of Scotland. Again, I mean, everyone knew they were by far the biggest majority party in Scotland. But the SNP has announced plans for compulsory price caps in Scotland, which would limit the price of up to 50 essential items, again, including bread, milk and cheese. I mean, again, not so good if you're on if you're dairy intolerant and I mean, really. I mean, but again, this doesn't work anywhere in the world. No. They tried this in the 70s. They try this in a lot of these countries. It doesn't work. And who do they think should absorb this? Should absorb this price cut? I mean, who's supposed to absorb it? Is it the supermarkets? They're just going to tell private companies you have to make less profit. Is that a law now? Or should the dairy farmers, and the wheat farmers, should they absorb that extra cost? Because that's what supermarkets have been making them do an awful lot.
And that's the problem, isn't it? Because the supermarkets themselves aren't going to eat that up. So it is going to be the farmers and suppliers in the food chain are the ones who are already taking a massive hit. When you look at how much it costs to raise beef cattle, for example. No wonder the cost of meat is expensive in this country.
You only have to watch Jeremy Clarkson's The Farm to see. I mean, someone raises a sheep for like a year or 2 years, and the cost of that and the effort for that, and they're getting sort of 40 quid for it.
Exactly. So it's sort of negative figures every single time. Yeah. I mean, I know a beef farmer who is just beside themselves with absolute rage because the amount it costs to feed these animals and keep them in pastures and all the rest of it that goes in the welfare checks that they have to do, they don't get very much at market.
Yeah, and the costs have legitimately gone up. I mean, again, things like, I've certainly noticed this one. Chocolate has gone up. And I'm not, and that's because there's been some very bad, cocoa harvests. I mean, there are basic reasons. But also, if the transport costs have all gone up because of the cost of fuel, and by the way, we're expecting we're going to get that Rachel Reeves is going to cancel that planned fuel duty freeze. But again, when we knew that was going to happen. So those costs have gone up. The cost of things like fertiliser, again, the cost of things like wages for people involved in these products in Britain, and all the costs associated with this. Fertiliser is a crucial one, and that's been massively impacted by both the Ukraine war and the Iran war. But again, lots of this is impacted by problems with the price of oil and gas. It comes down to that. Now, here's the thing: we are uniquely, hard affected by these things because we have such an insane policy when it comes to energy, and we're in this ridiculous situation where the government, while imposing sanctions on Russian oil and gas, has now loosened the oil sanctions to allow us to basically import oil that has been sold by Russia to countries like India where they then refine it into diesel and jet fuel, and then we're going to be allowed to buy it back.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's how strong we are on taking on the dictator in Russia. But why are we doing that? Because the costs have got so high. So because of our crazy policies in basically importing our oil and gas from the North Sea, but only when Norway drills it, and from America where they frack and things like, because we don't frack, all of these insane policies and no new licences for drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea under this government, and last government barely did any either. We are going to be basically loosening our sanctions on a horrible murderous dictator, helping him fund his weapons to kill Ukrainians, innocent Ukrainians in apartment buildings and hospitals and nurseries and goodness knows what. I mean, genuine madness and incompetence of this government knows no bounds.
I didn't know if the headline was real to begin with, because it's one of those absolutely ridiculous statements. So you don't want to go for the oil and gas in the oil fields that you have off your country, but you're quite willing to take it from a circuitous route from a murderous dictator. So, but that's okay. But after saying that you shouldn't do it and it's all bad, they completely reverse that position. So why are we now not looking at the oil fields? There was a huge debate this week in the House of Commons, which I listened to bits of, largely because it went on for a very long time. No answers really came from the government as to why they're not even considering it. There were a lot of words spoken.
A lot of words,
No reason given. And you just think because they were planning this deal all the way through.
Yeah. It's genuinely painful. If you want to have another clue of just how unserious this government is, have we got a little video that we can play? Yesterday, now the Education Secretary got someone in to talk to her about what they're doing in education, and a top expert in their field, because we've got a huge number of children coming out of school, frankly, with barely any qualifications. We've got massive problems with discipline in schools. We've got kids turning up, not even able to use the toilet, not even able to hold a pen, have a normal conversation. We've got violence. We've got massive, suspensions. We've got so many problems in our schools. The number of children who are coming out of schools who literally don't know anything other than the latest, climate or trans propaganda that is being pumped into them. So who did the Education Secretary decide to bring in to the department yesterday? And they've done at least 3 or 4 different posts on social media, just on X, about this. One, Gemma Collins. And if you don't know who Gemma Collins is, lucky you. She is reality TV. She's just been in I'm a Celebrity. She's I think from The Only Way is Essex. But this is Gemma Collins meeting with the woman in charge of educating your children.
You better make sure, honeys, that whatever you're going to be learning, you concentrate, because you're going to be taking it into your future career. And one day, kids, this could be you. I hope this will help people to be ambitious. I didn't even get a grade in maths because I found it so panicky and so stressful. Part of that was not believing in myself. All that pie over sky or whatever it is, you probably know.
There are no words.
No.
Claire, there are no words.
No.
That's what the Education Secretary did yesterday. And was so proud of it. They put out that video and numerous other videos.
And that would have been through a decision-making process like you've never seen, with the department, with special advisors, with civil servants, with the government themselves. And ultimately, the Education Secretary thought that somebody who has no qualifications, who struggled at school, and they thought that was a really good idea. Don't do well in your exams, kids, because you can still end up a reality TV star. How is that in exam season? Incentivising those kids to actually do their best.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely terrifying. It really is. Let's also talk about Andy Burnham. And I would say it's terrifying views on women. An interview has emerged. And again, these people aren't quiet about these things. This is a typical Labour view about trans-identifying men, because that's what they are. When you say someone's called a trans woman, they're not. They're a man who is either claiming to be, believes himself to be a woman, but he's not, because that's just not only fact, but also, by the way, the law. Out of the Supreme Court, guys. But Andy Burnham back in 2022, and he's confirmed this since, has said that men who identify as women should be able to use women's toilets and only a small minority object. Apparently, he says the idea that single-sex spaces should be protected for biological women was a, quote, minority view, and said that this was just supposed feminists trying to start culture wars by demanding protection for places like women's toilets from men. And now, I mean, there's going to be questions on the doorstep, I think we can safely say. But he says it's quite a small minority view. I guess we are just quite a small minority, and I guess we are both supposed feminists, are we not, Claire?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have that put onto a T-shirt, a mug and a tea towel.
I'm going to get that done. I'm going to get that done.
Absolutely should, because I'm proud of that minority view that I hold, and I think everybody should know about it. What a ridiculous statement. He may as well put things in sort of, commas, because you just think, why are you doing this? But also, it's the law.
His whole lot, it was the law in 2022, but a lot of Labour people were ignoring it. By the way, the government is still ignoring the law right now. Yeah. But one of the things he goes on to say in this, and there's no reason to think he's changed his views, is this idea that that people are concerned about. He says, the idea that people are falsely portraying their gender in a different way just because, i.e., men pretending they think they're women so they can get into women's spaces. He says, because they want to abuse a woman's space or encroach on women's safety. Maybe it happens, but you're talking a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people. Why are we allowing everyone to get into this really polarised and terribly hateful, it's always hateful, isn't it? No. Hateful debate about these issues. He goes, I'm going to make it really plain. I support trans rights and I want that to be known. Well, you can support trans rights. Trans people have no fewer rights than anyone else in this country, and that is a good thing. But they don't get to have other people's rights.
Yes.
That's the key thing. They don't get to trample on women's rights. I mean, this is the thing. It's always for you, it's a small number of people. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And it's a small number of men who do the whole rapey violence thing as well. The trouble is, when you are a woman in an enclosed space like a toilet or stripping off in a changing room at the swimming pool or wherever, you don't know. The funny thing is, Andy Burnham, I mean, I'm just a supposed feminist in a very small minority, so you don't have to listen to me. But one of the weird things about very, very dangerous men who either want to get their kicks watching women and girls change or want a chance to sexually abuse them or even rape them or be violent towards them in another way, one of the weird things about them is they don't wear T-shirts saying, I'm a sexual predator on them. They don't have tattoos across their face saying, I'm going to rape you, or I'm getting a hard-on because I'm watching you get changed down to your pants and your bra in a changing room when you're changing as a nurse in your hospital uniform. They don't do that. So we don't know which men are dangerous, which is why we have to assume that all men are dangerous, which is why women campaigned for and won. And by the way, I think the Labour Party was used to be very supportive of women getting these rights, our own safe spaces. And you know what? Normal right-thinking men don't have a problem with it because they understand that their mothers, their aunts, their wives, their daughters, their sisters might actually want some privacy, some decency and some safety when they're in a vulnerable situation getting undressed or in a private space. And I find it extraordinary that a man who thinks he's Mr. Progressive should think that. But I'm very happy to send you a T-shirt that I'm just going to get them made, Andy Burnham. But let's put that T-shirt up there. I think we should all be rightly wearing these T-shirts, supposed feminists, because if you think that women don't deserve to have spaces where men who just say, I'm called Sheila, I've put on a dress and now I'm a woman, can enter at any time, I think we're just supposed feminists. Well, this supposed feminist, Andy Burnham, is not impressed. Would you buy a T-shirt like that, Claire?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Show me where I can get it. Send me the link. I'm having it.
Well, Kelly Jo Keane, she's done some fantastic T-shirts about what is a woman. Kelly Jacob, I need you to make that T-shirt for me. Absolutely. It's mind-blowing that this is still the conversation we have to have
in 2026.
It's not a culture war. We didn't start the culture war.
No, we didn't. But they seem to forget that. And the comment about it's only, you're talking a tiny, tiny, tiny number of people. Well, how many is the right number?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that number? But
maybe we should ask Isla Bryson, the double rapist in Scotland who was being put in a women's prison.
Yeah, how many is the right number to have? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. 2 men in my household wouldn't dream of going anywhere near women's changing room, they'd panic
and
run
are
the other
equally
way.
horrified by these, by the idea of even unisex places.
Oh, absolutely.
It
and
is extraordinary. Do you think this is going to be a big issue on the doorstep in Makersfield in the by-election? Because Andy Burnham has been selected as the candidate officially now. We've also got the Reform candidate. He's a plumbers. All the plumbers suddenly want to be MPs, don't they? We had the Greens plumber, didn't we, in Gordon Denton? This is Robert Kenyon. He fought the seat in 2024. He's a plumber. He's born and bred there. I mean, Andy Burnham really very near as well. To be fair, they're both local men. To be fair, but he's basically, look, I'm not after this as a career move. I just want to represent my area. And he's ex-military. We love that.
And everybody has the right to stand in their local area, and I think it's better when you do have people from the locality trying to represent people in Parliament. Absolutely. Is it going to be a big issue on the doorstep? It will come up, because there will be women
for me.
who
I've
work in education or in healthcare who see the effects of this. So, yeah, it will come up on the doorstep, but I think largely you are dealing with the usual things of cost of living.
But for me, it's a, again, it doesn't matter which party it is. If someone, there are Tories. You work for the Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, who thinks for some bizarre reason that I'm transphobic because I don't believe that men can become women. I mean, I'm literally stating biological fact.
Shall I get her a T-shirt as
well?
You
should absolutely. I'll pay for that one. Absolutely. No, but we have a real issue, and whichever party it is, I'm not party political on this one. If you don't accept basic biological reality and you don't accept the needs of women because of the blatantly obvious differences between men and women physically, the way we need our safe spaces, if you don't accept that, I don't think you're fit for public office. I don't care what party you stand for.
No, and I don't disagree with that, and I think there needs to be some proper conversations to be had, and the people of Makerfield seem to be pretty down to earth and pretty straight talking from what I've heard so far. I don't know the area. I have never been there.
That's the laws for you.
I have listened to a lot.
They're not standing on ceremony.
They're not, and they're going to give it to them straight, whoever the candidates
exactly. Can we also just talk about Peter Mandelson? This came up just near the end of my show last night. So we've got all these Peter Mandelson files and this whole vetting process, the whole thing that has exploded in Keir Starmer's face. And one of the reasons why Labour people want to oust Keir Starmer is they know what's coming down the line. They're fully aware of the full horror of how many times Keir Starmer has lied about how he handled the vetting of Peter Mandelson. I mean, he should have gone by now just on that alone to become our ambassador to the US. But there's a whole load of documents that were supposed to be released. There was a humble address, his vote in Parliament. Even Labour MPs voted for all these documents to be released. They've gone to this special committee which has looked over, this is the Intelligence and Security Committee, so they're not going to, and they look over the documents, they get to see everything, but they'll only release things and redact what's necessary to make sure it is, they're not revealing things that shouldn't be revealed in the public domain. The government was supposed to be publishing more. Oh, there's always a reason why they can't. Oh, we've gone into recess. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And now they're saying they're not going to publish the next set of documents until June. The actual committee, the cross-party committee, has accused them of a cover-up.
Yeah.
There's no reason why, but they're not going to publish them until, guess what? After June the 18th, the date of the Makerfield by-election. This is blatant politicking. This is so outrageous, and it is a cover-up.
It absolutely is. There was an urgent question granted in the chamber of the House of Commons to push the government into making that decision a lot quicker, and it was a very feisty debate set by Sir Jeremy Wright, who is extremely quiet, thoughtful, but very, very good at these kind of procedural matters, knows his stuff. And the whole cross-party committee, as you've just said, are thinking that the government is not a shambles, and is going back on its word and was being too sensitive about the information it wanted to have redacted. And they said, no, you're going at this the wrong way. You're redacting practically everything. Let's go back and do it.
It's not about protecting the government, protecting national secrets, security, and things
absolutely
like that. But not protecting the the backsides of advisors and the Prime Minister who made these terrible decisions. It is quite extraordinary. It really is. Meanwhile, by the way, Surrey police investigating child sex abuse claims after the Epstein files release, looking into that. I mean, this ain't going away anywhere anymore. There's no doubt at all, when we see the next set of documents, that's going to be an instant resigning issue for Keir Starmer, which is why I think he is going to go before then. I mean, I've been saying for weeks now he's going to go, and I'm someone who said a year ago he's going to last the term at this rate. But, I mean, it's just untenable. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we are talking about, whether it's Burnham on this, whether it's, in particular, the supermarket price cap. There's talk about some sort of voluntary price cap from the supermarkets. But the problems we've got are pretty much entirely down to our government policies, both Labour and Tories, on a lot of policies related to net zero. So what do you make of them asking supermarkets, we are told, to freeze the prices of essential food to help the cost of living? And what should be on that essential food list? Because I've got Prosecco and chocolate on my list. I can absolutely live without broccoli. I'm just saying. This is Talk. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call and get in touch. We'll get your calls up next.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:30 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls before we go to our next guest. Jason is in Wiltshire, wants to have his say on 0344 499 1000. Jason, what do you make of these this sort of talk about these supermarkets being asked to freeze prices of essential foods?
Morning, Julia. Thank you for taking the call. I hope I don't face both barrels from you this week like I did last week with my comments.
Behave then.
Yeah. Well, I actually think it's a bad idea because what will end up happening with this, obviously our essential goods, eggs, milk, various things like that, it'll get passed down the chain. Then we're going to have our poorly hit farmers already. We'll probably gain a bit more of it, which will then they'll be expected to work for less. And obviously it's going to affect them. What they should have done, which they haven't, again, Canada's brought it in now, is do something with actual fuel duty by cutting it or cutting the VAT or doing something like that to ease the cost of living.
Because that impacts everything we buy and everything we do, every business domestically. And they could do that really easy. And they've been making more money because the price of fuel has gone up. So, you know, they could just go back to what they were making at the beginning of the Iran conflict and we would all benefit.
But what we got to think of is they're skint. They need every penny they can get. When you've got a welfare bill that's more than what they're bringing in, they've got to get this money. It's Labour every time. All they do is tax. They don't ever do nothing else. They've never been any different since, I mean, old Labour, going back sort of old times, they were sort of a bit of a different setup. But what we've got now is ridiculous. And when she starts on, I saw it this morning, I was talking to Kieran about it, the fuel freeze. I spoke to you about this ages ago. What I just say is, we've managed to freeze fuel duty. It's like, yes, so you have, but you haven't cut anything and helped. This fuel duty is smoke and mirrors. It almost reminds me the same of we're going to stop the immigrants. They keep talking about this fuel duty.
They talk a good game.
Yeah, they talk it, but nothing ever happens.
And we knew perfectly well that they were going to, they were going to freeze it again. They were going to uncut the freeze, weren't they? I mean, we know perfectly well politically it's never going to happen. Jason, thank you for that. So you didn't get both barrels. Agree with you on all of that. Jackie is in Cheshire. Hello, Jackie. You want to talk about Andy Burnham, don't you?
Oh, yes, please, Julia. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Thanks for calling.
I've just been listening to the show and it just made me so angry listening to that women's rights. We just seem to be going backwards.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a minute. Are you just a very small minority and a supposed feminist then, Jackie? Like me?
I really do feel that we should get whoever deals with the women's rights in this country, try and get people together up north, put a stall up in Aston Makerfield, because the average person, I'm sorry, Joe, they won't listen to Talk TV.
Yep.
You know,
Fools.
They'll be listening to the news, and I'd be very surprised if they put it on the news.
Yeah. Well, that said, I mean, it's in a lot of newspapers today.
He needs to be called out on this.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a sanity test. That's all it is. It's a sanity reality test. People who will lie to you about whether or not they think men can become women, or people who will lie about anything.
It's just absolutely shocking. We're going backwards. They should be looking after us, and I think if reform people go knocking on the door, they'll think they'll just be being nasty. But I think if we get a women's rights stall put up, Ashton and Makerfield, I will go down and put a T-shirt on.
There you are.
And just quietly let everybody know what this person is all about. And also, he doesn't care. He just wants to get to number 10.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that. Jackie, great call. Thank you very much. Again, we're told people don't care about us. They really, really do. We're going to take a quick break right now. Then we're going to be talking to, wow, here's somebody who definitely doesn't care these days. Independent MP for Hollies, was a Labour MP, very plain speaking, Karl Turner. You want to stay tuned for that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's talk right now to the Aswell's Labour MP, now sitting as an independent for Hull East, Karl Turner, who joins us. Very good morning to you, Karl.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Lots to get through. Price caps in supermarkets. John Sweeney in Scotland is going to make them compulsory on 50 essential goods. The British government, the Westminster government, has apparently been in talks with supermarkets who are apparently non-impressed about some sort of voluntary freeze on prices in supermarkets to keep down the prices of essential goods. Good idea or bad idea?
It's nearly, I think, the balmiest idea I've ever read in my life. But not quite the balmiest, but it's getting close to it. It's utterly ridiculous. You go to the supermarket and say, do us a favour, mate. Any chance of capping the price of 6 eggs? It's nonsense. Utterly nonsense. And it speaks to the desperation of a government which has been in for 25 minutes that feels like it's been in for 25 years.
Oh, it does.
What an absolute disgrace. We should all be embarrassed.
But the bizarre thing about this is that actually we have an incredibly competitive supermarket system. I mean, you know, the competition, the price matching that goes on, and actually, although prices of food, and we've all noticed it when we go to the supermarket, you do it, certainly if you do a big shop, you go, how much? But you know, we've all noticed it when we go to the supermarket, the prices have gone up. However, they are still, even after the price rises we have seen in recent years, far lower compared with, you know, people's incomes than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. I mean, that is the reality.
I think that's the reality. And I mean, how do you control capitalism? The reality is this, look, these supermarkets are competing with many other supermarkets. The farmers are getting next to now for a pint of milk. We're getting it less than cost price at the supermarket. Look, the reality is, the government have got ways of pulling various levers. I'm not an expert on the economy.
Neither is Rachel Reeves. Didn't stop her.
But the truth is, there are ways of controlling inflation. I think it's come down a bit, not to the target that the Bank of England want and expect, but it's come down a bit today. But this idea is just crackers. It's balmy.
But the thing is, one of the main reasons why we are so impacted by the Ukraine war and indeed the Iran conflict lately, in terms of our food prices, we've got that massive hit on fertiliser in particular, but also on fuel costs with the sanctions on Russia, although they're downgrading those to tackle food costs. So apparently we don't care about Ukrainian children being bombed by the Russians this week because we're worried about the price ahead of a by-election in Makerfield. But net zero policies have meant that we're not fracking for gas, we're not having any new licences for oil and gas in the North Sea, but we'll take North Sea oil and gas from Norway, from the same oil field. I mean, I know the government's got policy on, you know, on building some nuclear power stations. I can't wait to see the first one in God knows how many years. This insane obsession with net zero that they've got in law, Tories were just as bad, frankly, means that we are uniquely badly, all the international agencies say, hit by all these extra fuel costs. But the solution from the government is not to drop net zero, not to cut VAT on fuel or things like that. No, their solution is to ask the supermarkets to take a nice big hit on their profits so that they can look a bit better to the voters. I mean, isn't the problem other government policies?
Yeah, well, it doesn't even offer anything to the voters. It makes the voters more angry. You know, that's the reality of that idea. You know, you're speaking to a member of the public, you say, oh, well, we're going to do our best. We've spoken to the supermarkets and we've asked them to voluntarily cut the prices on essential foods. It just makes it look like the government are just taking the mickey out of them, I think. Well, you know, there are ways. There's you know, what about capping fuel duty as an example? Taking in a bit less tax revenue in that, for example. The Tories did it for year on year. We've threatened, as I understand it, to lift the cap on that.
But everyone knows that Rachel Reeves, I'm expecting it as early as tomorrow, is going to go back to the freeze on fuel duty. But
I should think so.
But but everyone knew that's where she would have to go. But not saying, why doesn't she cut VAT on fuel? The government is raking in millions upon millions as a result of the fuel price hike. And they're not, and they're accusing the supermarkets effectively of making too much money on, you know, price of milk or bread or eggs. But at the same time, they're making money after the Iran conflict.
Yeah, well, the government's defence to that, I don't know if I agree with it, but their argument is actually people are spending more on fuel. That means they're spending less on other things in the economy, and therefore the tax take is about the same as we'd have expected it to be anyway, but for the fact that we're getting a load more extra money in VAT as a result of fuel going up. I don't know whether that's right or not. I'm not an economist, but I suspect it's not entirely true, if I'm honest.
No, but also people aren't spending things on money on other goods because fuel has gone up and they have to pay for fuel. They have to heat their homes or light their homes, and they have to use their car or their van to get to work or to do their job. They haven't got a choice about that, so they're cutting other spending.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have to do that if the government cut VAT.
Well, exactly. Yeah,
okay. Let's talk about a lot of this. Let's face it, it's politicking ahead of the Makerfield by-election, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yes.
Now we're told, isn't it, that all the cabinet ministers are going to be, and including Keir Starmer. Although I'm sure Andy Burnham would be thrilled if Keir Starmer went and campaigned for him in Makerfield in that Manchester seat. He was formally announced as the Labour candidate. We also had the announcement of the Reform candidate Robert Kenyon, who is a local man, a plumber, stood in the 24 elections. He says, look, he's a full-on born and bred local man, and Andy Burnham, is just out there for his own political ambitions. And there's a bit of truth in that. Although Andy Burnham, went to school nearby, sent his kids to school in the constituency, etc. But front page news today is Andy Burnham's. Well, I think utterly bizarre, but in the Labour circles, completely normal views about trans rights. Your party, ex-party, has got it into its head in the last 10 years or so that trans people had fewer rights than everyone else. They didn't, they don't, they never have. They have exactly the same rights as everyone else. What they don't have, and the Supreme Court established this very clearly last April, is the right to take other people's rights, particularly women's rights when it comes to our safe spaces. He's on record in 22, and he has... There's no reason to think he's changed his views, given what he has said in the last 6 months or so on this issue, that men who identify as women, call themselves trans women, but of course they're men, should be able to use women's toilets. And it's only a very small minority of supposed feminists like myself who object, who just want culture wars. Is he right?
Look, we've got the Supreme Court judgment, which I think the government needs to adhere to. I'm a lawyer by profession, so I very much respect and have deference to the judiciary in these matters. And in terms of the politics of this, look, I know it's contentious. I'm the type of person who says live and let live. However, I've got a 10-year-old daughter. If a geezer walks into a lady's toilets wearing a frock with a beard, I've got to tell you, being honest with you as a parent, I'm not very keen on that idea.
Funny that.
I don't think though, Julia, that geezer wearing a frock is going to want to do anything untoward to any other person in the toilet.
How do you know that?
I just think, well, I don't know that, but I just don't think that they might. But
So you think 10-year-old girls should take that risk?
No, I don't, actually. And that's why I say as a parent, I'd be a little bit perturbed, if I'm honest, about that. The guy...
You would tell him to get the hell out, and you know it.
I would say, listen, chum, I'd prefer you to wait around or find a unisex or whatever else, but my daughter's in there having a wee at the moment. I prefer you not to
Well,
go
then,
in.
I think that makes you... I think you'll find that makes you transphobic in your party and a bigot.
Well, that's a shame. That's a shame, because I don't think I am. My attitude is live and let live. But a guy in a frock with a beard is a guy in a frock with a beard. He might want to be identified as a woman, but in my view, he's not a woman.
Okay, but here's the thing. And you'll say live or let live. Well, women are happy to live or let live, but the reason why... I mean, again, if a bloke in the pub who just doesn't bother pretending he's called Sheila, if he goes into the women's loos, we all know the reaction from everybody. Oi, get out, women's toilets, get out. And we know that is the correct reaction from both women and men. But if a man just said whether he thinks he looks like a woman, they rarely do, or whether he's, as you say, a bloke with a beard in a frock. The point is that we don't know which men are going to be a danger to us or our children, and that's why all men are banned from women's toilets and changing rooms. Do you think this could be a vote loser for Andy Burnham?
I doubt it, to be honest with you. I don't think Andy Burnham is going to be affected by this. I don't think people are enraged by this stuff, actually, Julia. That's my experience of it. When I knock on the doors, and I knock on plenty, it's very rare that this stuff comes up. Honestly, it does occasionally, but it is a rarity in my experience.
Because it's an absolute deal. It's a deal breaker for me, for any candidate of any party.
It might be, but you're not a resident of Makerfield, and even if you were, you wouldn't be voting for Andy Burnham in any event. Let's be true about it.
I don't know. You don't know how I voted in the past for different parties, actually. You've no idea how I vote.
I'm a good guesser.
You've no idea how I vote.
I suspect Andy Burnham wouldn't be the candidate to represent you if he was a resident of Makerfield, but that's just my guess. Okay. I might be wrong.
On this issue alone, I can believe him to be unfit for public office. And I feel the same way about Keir Starmer as well. Can I ask you about this latest Mandelson cover-up as well? Because we've got a load of documents. Parliament voted, including Labour MPs, for us to have full view of the decision-making process to appoint Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the US, despite everyone knowing, including the Prime Minister, about his close links and friendship with Jeffrey Epstein after he'd been convicted of soliciting a child for prostitution and was serving prison, indeed, when Peter Mandelson was staying in his home. Parliament has said we want this, and the government has said they'll agree to it because as they are legally required to do so. But we found out yesterday they're going to delay publishing a lot of those documents until after the Makerfield by-election in mid-June because, let's face it, they're so explosive. The committee that has seen all the documents says the government is trying to cover up and they're trying to redact documents to save their embarrassment rather than national security. I mean, this is an outrage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is, actually. I think they should be fully transparent. The Intelligence and Security Committee is chaired by Kevin Jones. He is an incredibly well-regarded parliamentarian. He's always been incredibly impartial and objective about these things. He's not going to let any stone be left unturned. And I think, frankly, it's contemptuous to try and hide stuff. But I don't think it's for political gain, Julia. Why? Because the effect is on Keir Starmer's government, this, Julia, not on Andy Burnham.
True.
He's not been around for 2 years. So this is not going to help the Labour Party, i.e. the residents of Makerfield think, well, I'm going to vote for the Labour Party. They're not voting for the Labour Party in this, right? The irony of this situation is this. Reform, say vote Labour to get rid of Starmer. Yeah. And Andy Burnham's team, if I'm there knocking on the doors, I'll be saying vote Labour to get rid of Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
That's what I'll be doing.
That's the irony.
That's what everybody else should be doing. Because the reality is, if we try and pretend anything else, we're kidding ourselves and we're taking the mick out the electorate.
Karl Turner.
I'm sick to death of taking the mick out of the electorate, and that's why I've decided my New Year's resolution, speak the truth. At least, if you believe it, people have confidence.
I'm all hail to you on that. More of this from more MPs. We appreciate it. Karl Turner, always good to talk to you. Independent, ex-Labour MP for Hull is. Kerr Pearsall, quick response to that.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting that it's the people on the street that will make the decision, and don't take them for granted.
Never
and I think
never take them for granted. Yeah. All the polls, by the way. 10:50 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about the soaring cost of HS2 and why we can't build anything in this country. And even when there is a good idea, we can't do it, and why this may or may not have been a good idea in the first place. That's up next. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Look, lots of other news around this week, but you could be forgiven for not noticing the latest madness when it comes to HS2, the high-speed, not as high-speed it was going to be, as it was planned to be, rail link that could now cost up to £102.7 billion, and trains will be slower than at first planned. This was the announcement from the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, saying Labour had inherited a litany of failure from the previous government, and she said instead of signalling the country's ambition, HS2 became a signal of the country's decline. Now, I've got to be honest with you, she's actually wrong, because it's not going to be 102.7 billion. It's going to be way more than that. I mean, genuinely, before there was even a spade in the ground, they'd spent about 20 billion. It's absolute, utter nonsense. We can't get anything done in this country. And even if we could, would this be the right project? That is the big question. Well, let's talk about this to Joe Rukin. He's the founder of the campaign group Stop HS2. A very good morning to you, Joe.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Now, is this your opposition to HS2? Is it because it's just a massive, big white elephant project that has just taken, years and years? I mean, I remember, doing interviews about the chaos and the failure at HS2 back in sort of 2011, for goodness sake. And it's 2026 now. Nothing gets done. It takes too long. It's costing too much. Is it about that why you object to it, or do you object to this particular project? Whether if it'd come in on time and on budget, would it have been a project you'd support?
No, the whole problem with HS2 is it was fundamentally flawed from the start. Basically, 250 miles an hour was just plucked out the air, and all the problems that surround this project come from that, and the fact that they basically weren't willing to listen to any criticism whatsoever, because it's designed for such high speed. It means you have to go straight. Yeah. It means you have to take up far more land. And no one knew why this 250 mile an hour had been just plucked out of the air.
It's a nice round number.
Yeah, later comes out to 225. It's come down again now. But because of that, it means you can't go around communities. It means you can't go around environmental sites. And it means that it costs so much more to build. And that's why the project has been fundamentally flawed from the start, because it was the construction industry who just went to Lord Adonis back in the day. And Heidi Alexander saying it's a Tory project. Well, actually, it was a Labour project to start off with. But
then it was a Tory project.
Every party has to, bear blame for this, because the problem with HS2, it had cross-party support, which is the worst possible thing you can have for British pop.
You're right. They nearly always get it wrong when it's cross-party. But this is the thing. Other countries manage to build these things. People talk about, the bullet trains in Japan and how extraordinarily fast they are. You've got, if you get on a high-speed train in France, everyone will go, wow, this is amazing. We're in Germany. But everyone goes on about, the Chinese will have built, 1 million miles of train in the time it takes us to build 1 mile of train track. And it's easy in a bigger country, less developed country, to do these sorts of things. And there is a difficulty in terms of the route, going through North London. I've got a friend who had their home in Camden compulsory purchased over 10 years ago. Can't sell it. They haven't taken it over yet because they haven't started that bit of the project, but it's got no value because, no one wants to buy something that's on that route. They've just, loads of people are hamstrung, whole villages, disappearing. But the reality is we do need to have new projects. If the Victorians had said, oh, well, we can't build a railway, we wouldn't be able to get anywhere. We wouldn't have had the Industrial Revolution. We do need to be in the 21st century and build these things, don't we?
No, that's the thing, Julia. That's the problem with this. People, you get these blusterous arguments to say, oh, we need to do things. It's progress. No, You need to look at the individual project and see if that project is worthwhile.
That's the
because
point.
I sort of drifted off earlier. What I was trying to say was the problem was that all these lobbyists went to Lord Adonis and said, we want to build the fastest rail, the most expensive, no, the fastest, the most expensive, fastest railway in the history of the world. And it was the wet dream of the construction industry. And that's the problem, that it lacked any sort of scrutiny because they just said, we're going to get ahead with this. Yeah. We're going to go ahead with this. It doesn't matter what the fundamental flaws are in this project. We're going to go ahead with this because a lot of people are going to make a lot of money.
And they're also got to a point where so much money had been spent. We were in the sort of, the sunk cost fallacy, that so much money had already been spent without a single spade going in the ground, that there was a point where, well, we can't walk away now because that's 20 billion quid of money spent. But the amount that's been spent on consultants, I mean, if they spent that on diggers, that would be better. But again, this is the issue. I mean, as you say, there are plenty of other projects perhaps could be done. I mean, a lot of people would argue getting to between London and Birmingham, they've cut it now so it's not high speed from Birmingham onwards, but getting between London and Birmingham 20 minutes quicker is not the top priority. Better transport links between the great northern and Midland cities, east and west, would have been a far better way to spend money and would have been done at a fraction of the cost.
That's what we said right from the start. You could deliver far more benefits to far more people, far more quickly and far cheaper by investing in the transport infrastructure that people use every day, which are the city-wide journeys, the journeys against people, against regions, the commuting journeys. The fallacy of HS2 is meant to not only deliver speed, but free up capacity. And that actually means that some of the trains that currently operate on the West Coast Main Line will get cancelled. You have, for example, Coventry. Every train between London and Birmingham on the West Coast Main Line stops at Coventry. If you build HS2 and you take those London to Birmingham trains and stick them on HS2, that means that those London to Birmingham trains, they don't exist, so they don't stop.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the thing. It's almost like as you say, everyone just got built up, didn't they, in a very sort of big, exciting project, and it just got completely away from them. And again, government after government after government has failed on this. And by the way, we're the ones footing the bill. By the way, barely anyone travels by train in this country. Vast majority of people don't get a train in this country from one year to the next. But there we are. Joe Rukin, founder of Stop HS2, thank you so much for joining us. It's 10:59, coming up to the top of the hour. Lots more top guests to come. Want to hear your thoughts on all the big stories, in particular the possibility of some sort of price freeze on essential goods in supermarkets. Would you welcome that? Or is that just a pie in the sky, mad socialist 1970s idea from the government? 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts on that. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's 3 minutes past 11. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Very much appreciate you joining us. And I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And if you have missed anything from the show, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be discussing more on the cost of living. And is the answer for supermarkets to be asked to freeze prices of essential food to help with the cost of living? That is apparently what the conversation is between the government and supermarkets. Now, the Labour government has said, oh, no, we're not looking at any compulsory price freezes, because they've been criticising the SNP leader and, of course, new again, First Minister John Swinney in Scotland, where he is proposing 50 essential goods are subject to a basic compulsory price cap. Good luck with that, Scotland. But is that the answer? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, we're going to discuss Andy Burnham's candidacy, official now as of yesterday, in the Makerfield by-election for Labour, where, you know, vote Labour to get rid of the Labour Prime Minister is basically the campaign slogan. But how significant will be his now, I mean, there's no reason to think he's changed his view on this at all. His views on trans women, what we also know as men, trans-identified men, whether or not he believes they should be allowed to use women's toilets, because apparently he thinks that, well, they should. And apparently the people who oppose this are just a tiny minority of supposed feminists. Well, we'd love to hear your thought about that. Us also, we're going to be talking about plenty of other stories besides. And joining me for all of that is Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor. A very good morning once again to you.
Morning.
I say lots to talk about. A question we're asking our audience is about the supermarkets. Front page of the Times today, various other papers. Supermarkets may be asked to freeze the prices of essential food to help with the cost of living. Your reaction to that, give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Also, of course, calls are charged at the national rate and text cost one standard network rate message. Claire doesn't have to call in. She is here. I mean, the compulsory idea that Scotland are proposing, that, I mean, again, Mandani, the new New York mayor, saying basically, like, you know, state-owned, literally New York state-owned supermarkets selling goods to people. I mean, this is all mad communist madness, isn't it? The government is saying, oh, no, not compulsory. And they're kind of trying, the Treasury Minister, Dan Thomason, has been out and about, way out of his depth. I mean, actually felt sorry for him. He was giving soft soap interviews on the media round this morning, and I still felt sorry for him. Basically, oh, no, we're not really looking at this. But I don't think the supermarkets are lying. No. Times, BBC and others, they've seen documents where this has been discussed with supermarkets. Basically, this idea that they would be voluntarily asked to freeze prices on essential food, like milk, eggs, bread and things like that. What do you make of this idea?
Well, I also want to know what they consider to be essential
chocolates.
Well, everybody's got to look. Can I add peanut butter to that list?
Peanut butter?
Oh my God!
Oh, come on!
The best food stuff ever. That has to be on there. Otherwise, this is dead.
This is the thing. Everyone's going to have a different notion.
There you go.
And again, a lot of this, like, you know, stuff is sort of, you know, if you're one of these, you know, Manjaro Ozempic people, you're not supposed to be eating a load of bread and dairy, are you?
Well, they want some rice crackers, I assume, wouldn't they?
I don't know
some
what
rice
they
cakes.
Eat. What do they eat? What
bits of cardboard.
Their unhappy little lives, not enjoying food anymore.
See, my husband will be on the chocolate front as well, because he quite likes that. But why say that it's going to be voluntary, but you're going to incentivise supermarkets, which essentially means that you're going to bribe them to do it by saying we'll remove some restrictions, we'll remove some red tape.
And that's the thing. Some of the red tape about healthy food and the green stuff about basically supermarkets pay a fortune extra for a lot of the packaging issues because they're responsible for the packaging until it goes to the landfill, which is where it all ends up anyway.
Exactly.
Don't pretend it does anything. But it's like, so they don't care about those things because the cost of living is now an issue.
Yeah, exactly. So therefore you can put the sweets back by the tills. Don't worry about putting broccoli on special offer. You know, shove that at the back and have all the bad food out. So what is it going to be? A state-owned supermarket, as Mamdani said. Can you imagine that? A loaf of bread with like Rachel Reeves's face on it, approved by the government.
I mean,
I don't want that.
It's just utter mad. But again, also completely ignoring. And I'm amazed by the number of messages we've had from people saying, you know, well, you know, supermarkets supermarket profits. Supermarkets make a hell of a lot of money, but the reason they make a hell of a lot of money is they sell a hell of a lot of stuff because we buy a lot of food, and particularly as people don't go out to pubs and restaurants, and they're buying their booze in the supermarkets as well. We spend more in the supermarkets and they make money, but there is such a strong competitive market for supermarkets in this country. Their profit margin is 3 to 4%. That is the sorry, I've got hair in my face. That is the profit margin they're making. I mean, I don't have an issue with any supermarket making that kind of margin. That's not price gouging. No. That's not profiteering. Their costs have gone up. Heating the stores, paying their staff, national insurance, the minimum wage. Yeah, what a surprise. People who are stacking shelves when they're in their late teenage years, what a surprise they're on minimum wage. Of course they are, as we would have been when we were their age. The cost of keeping those freezer cabinets cold has gone sky high. The cost of transporting those goods to the shops, sky high. The fertiliser used for making a lot of those goods, gone sky high. It's in shortage since Ukraine war and now the Iran conflict as well. Everything they do has gone sky high. Of course prices have gone up. That's not price gouging or profiteering. That's the market.
And do you think also perhaps the loss that they have through prolific shoplifters have anything to do with it as well? So perhaps we'd like to help them with that. What about the government actually stepping in and saying, let's get the shoplifters and let's deal with them properly rather than just letting them run off down the high street? Maybe if we offered them some help, the supermarkets might be a little bit more lenient towards it. But it's absolutely ridiculous.
But again, this whole it's a lefty 1970s style nonsense. And again, it's government policies that are forcing our prices up because we've got these net zero policies, which means we've got sky high energy bills, and then you have to try and subsidise old people's energy bills and subsidise bills when they go up after the Ukraine war, and we've got massively high fuel duty, and likely Rachel Reeves is going to announce it. Instead of ending the freeze on fuel duty, she's going to keep the freeze. I mean, every government say they're going to end it, and every government ends up sticking to the freeze. Who are we kidding? But she could cut VAT. I mean, they tax their own tax on the increased price of they genuinely put VAT on the fuel duty aspect of the fuel they charge for, and then and they're making a fortune more because the cost of that fuel has gone up, so they're making all that extra money, and then they're accusing other people of profiteering. No, the government's profiteering. The government is making money out of this conflict and out of the cost of living. But if they cut fuel duty or VAT on fuel, that would cut costs for everybody. That has the domestic costs. 80% of people use a car to get to and from work. All this HS2 nonsense. Most people, as I said, don't get a train. I'm not saying it. That is, if you look at the official transport documents, most people don't get a train even once a year. That is not an issue. It's a middle class issue. That as most people are in their cars, the only way of getting to and from work, school, or they use their cars for work. That will make a difference to everything we buy in the shops. Make a difference to every single thing.
Exactly. I'd much rather they looked at fuel duty and actually brought that down. It's always reminded me, it's sitting there on the fridge. I've got the reminders, pay my vehicle road fund licence, whatever we're calling it, tax
what
these
is it
days.
called this week?
I don't know, but it's very expensive. And suddenly that's gone up, and I've got a low polluting car, but no, they're still going to sting me for a couple of £100 for that for a year. And you just think endless costs, one after the other, and they're not making any effort to bring those down, and they're just going to stick the cost somewhere else.
And those are choices, exactly. Also a choice, I mean, absolutely fascinating. We've got these sanctions on Russian oil and gas. Now, Britain has never actually imported much oil and gas. That was a big issue for countries like Germany in particular, just completely and utterly. And again, they were anti-nuclear, so they decided to import all the electricity from France, which is almost entirely nuclear. I mean, Germany, basket case economy now compared to what it once was, the powerhouse of Europe. But by the way, we should definitely go back into the EU because it's all going swimmingly well there. I mean, really, these people are insane. But we have been hit to a certain extent because, again, global markets. Ed Miliband's right about that. There are global markets. But we've been buying, Norwegian oil and gas. We've been buying American oil and liquefied natural gas. And of course, we've seen not just with the Ukraine war, but also with what's been happening in the Strait of Hormuz because of the Iran conflict, that prices have gone up. And because we've seen fuel prices rise, the UK has decided, while sanctioning the purchasing of Russian oil and gas in Britain, we are going to allow the companies and organisations in this country to buy Russian oil and gas, well, particularly Russian oil, that has gone to third-party countries like India, who've been buying it cheap from Russia, funding the war effort in Ukraine to bomb civilians, by the way, in an illegal war. And then they basically, do whatever they need to do to refine it, and then they send it here, and it's used as fuel and jet fuel and things like that. And we're going to be allowed to have that. So we are going to be buying stuff that is funding Putin's war effort, whilst also funding the Ukraine's war effort against Putin. I mean, morals, sanity, could we have one or both of these ever in government policy?
You don't think there's going to be a consistent view, do you, anytime soon? Because this lot just don't really understand how the world works. They're not understanding that we could just go and get our own North Sea oil and gas and we could deal with that ourselves. Do you know what? We could open up some refineries and actually refine it ourselves as well if they'd thought a bit more long term. This goes for my party too. This is not necessarily a political point on that. So I would like that to be seen, rather than giving money over to Putin.
They've all been as mad as each other. To be fair to Reform, they're the first ones who said drop the net zero stuff. You cannot have a growing economy. No. You cannot deal with energy prices or fuel prices or become in any way a country that can either defend itself or can boost, have a strong economy unless you get rid of net zero. Full stop. Number one, nothing to discuss. If you don't accept that, the country's down, and they don't. Talking of which, the future of the country, Andy Burnham, he wants you to vote Labour at the Makerfield by-election, which the writ has been moved. It's yesterday. Officially, it's going to be on the 18th of June. He is the official Labour candidate. There was no other candidate standing. It is him. Vote Labour to get rid of the Labour Prime Minister. That is basically the reason why people would be voting for Andy Burnham. He wants to be an MP so that he can stand for the Labour leadership. He's been criticised over various different things. He said his past has come back to haunt him. And again, he was called Flip-Flop Handy for a reason when he was in government. And his whole sort of, brilliant PR and campaign video he put out, Mr. Local Man, and he is a local man. But when he talks about 40 years of failure in government, it's like, mate, you were health secretary and culture secretary and a junior minister in a hell of a lot of those governments. So come on, you were part of the problem. But now some comments he made in 2022, and there's no reason to think he's changed his view given what he's said in interviews in the last 6 months or so. He said that men who identify as women, call themselves trans women, but of course they are men, should be able to use women's toilets. And apparently the people objecting were only a very small minority. And he says they're just people who are quote, supposed feminists who are just playing culture wars. A little bit earlier on the show, I think we should start the market for. Let's show the image of me in a T-shirt where I am a supposed feminist. Apparently, women, if you are concerned about going into a toilet, or your daughter or your sister, your mum, going into a toilet or a changing room where a man can just say, oh, no, I'm called Jane today and I've decided to be in here, whether they're dressed as a woman or not dressed as a woman, gender recognition certificate or not. If you object to that, you are a supposed feminist and you're a tiny minority. And frankly, I think Andy Burnham thinks you should shut the hell up. Claire Pearsall, I'm not sure we are going to shut the hell up, are we?
No, we're not going to shut that. And why should we? Women have always been the ones that have to take the back seat, be nice to everybody and relent in any kind of aspirations that we had. But we fought back, we got the vote, we can do what... We can work where we like, we can serve in the armed forces, but we're not allowed to say no to a bloke in a women-only changing room. Why is that even a thing in 2026? Most men the law, would run a mile. They really would.
Normal men. And that's not about someone. If a man wants to dress up as a woman, that's his choice. He's free and legal to do that. But let's stop pretending that's normal. No, I'm sorry. And that's not a moderate. I'm just saying, no, most normal men don't do that. No. And I'm sorry, I think we're right. And look, some of these men may honestly believe that they are women, but that is I'm sorry, that used to be called, that body dysphoria.
Yeah.
That was it was cited as a mental health problem, because thinking you are something you are not is a mental health problem.
It's a delusion.
I want to give you as much sympathy and health treatment, that's fine, but you're not. Mm-hmm. You're not. Or it's men who are frankly fetishists and getting a kick, or they are men who are predatory. Either way, on all grounds, no, I don't want you in my loos, and I don't want you in my daughter's loos. I don't want you in my friend's kids' loos. I don't want you there. Nothing to discuss. And if you're in there, when I'm in there, there is going to be a problem, and it's not going to be my problem. I'm going to be very, very clear about that, because I think women have had enough. We are done with this, and I'm done. I'm really done with men in positions of authority telling women what we should and should not put up with. Do one. do one. Not going to happen, mate, because women didn't get the vote by going, oh, well, let's do what the men want us to do. Yeah. Women didn't get, the freedoms they got and the rights they got and the safe spaces they need for their dignity, their privacy and their safety by saying, oh, let's be nice. I'm not going to be nice about safety for women. I don't have to be nice about that. Hey, men, why don't we ask the men who think they're women to be nice and don't invade our spaces? Be the nice ones. There are rights. You go and get your own, but you don't get ours.
Well, there you go. I mean, what else can you say to that?
I'm so angry about this. I'm so angry about these bloody middle-aged men telling women what we have to put up with.
Yeah, it's mansplaining.
It's totally mansplaining.
Don't be offended. We're telling you it's all right. Well, no, sorry, not believing it.
I know. I'm really had enough of it. What do you make of the Reform candidate? He's a candidate. He's Robert Kenyon. He's been selected. He's another plumber. The Greens have Hannah Spencer. Yeah. Luckily, he doesn't have Hannah Spencer's mad "I'm presenting on children's television today" haircut. I mean, seriously, try and look like a grown-up, love. He's been selected to take 90, probably a local man, stood in 2024. As usual, he's made some, we're told, provocative posts on his X account, including one saying the King should house asylum seekers in Buckingham Palace. Well, yeah, the King's so... What's wrong with that? Yeah, if you're so keen on immigration, mate, why don't you... But apparently they refuse to investigate him and say politics need more sort of plain-speaking people like him. I'd like to point out, I mean, some of the tweets that post that Wes Streeting also wants to run a Labour leadership contest. Yeah. I mean, he's written that many tweets in the past, basically threatening violence against people. I mean, I like Wes Streeting, but seriously, Labour have got to stop thinking that what people have written on X in the past is going to actually change how people vote.
But that's the first thing people go to now is what's their social media history. Yeah. And it doesn't help when your party then goes and deletes your entire social media history because then it looks like you're hiding something. And of course it does. Nothing is ever deleted forever. Do you know what? If he's a plumber... Tremendous. I think we need to branch out into other trades now because we've had a plumber already. Yeah. This is another plumber. How about a scaffolder or an electrician?
No, but I like people who've done a proper job. People who haven't just started out as an assistant in a think tank and then a special advisor to an MP and then stood to be an MP. Experience in the real world, living with a profit and loss account and understanding about employing people and about turning up and doing the job. And if you don't turn up and do the job, you don't get paid. Yeah, I'd quite like to have more people like that in Parliament, thank you.
So would I, and I think most people would, and they do represent the areas that they're coming from, and I think that's really important. I hate it when parties parachute in somebody from outside. It very rarely works.
Well, what do you make of the whole idea of like calls for the Tories to not stand a candidate, to unite the right? This is a Reform voting seat in the last council by-election. And Reform came a much better second than the Tories did to the Labour candidate who had a 5,000 majority. Greens apparently debating whether to oppose Andy Burnham because they're worried that that if they split the left vote, then the Reform will get it. I mean, we are in new territory on that front.
We are, but the Conservatives should stand a candidate, absolutely should, because it is the responsibility.
She is a Conservative, by the way.
Yeah, for transparency. But it is for the people of that area to decide. And all right, the Conservatives have a tiny chance of saving their deposit when we stand there, but it doesn't matter. You need to offer people everything.
If you're the opposition party, you need to. I think that's a fair argument.
You don't enter into deals with other parties.
But they may not, perhaps, like a lot of parties do, sort of unofficially. They stand a candidate, but they don't necessarily throw the kitchen sink at it.
Absolutely, they're expensive. By-elections are expensive as well, and I think everybody's going to be looking at the cost of this because there are more to come.
Expensive for the taxpayer as well, isn't it? A £5 million cost. Why does it cost huge. £5 million? How do they spend £5 million on a by-election?
Yeah, well, I mean, very boring things like polling stations, like poll clerks, like ballot papers, like postal ballot papers. Everybody has to be paid.
But they need a cheaper printing company.
Well, I think that's it. We should open up for tender. Have some T-shirts at the same time.
I'd love to see whether you could get this done cheaper. I really would. But there we are. I mean, we shall see. Let's also talk about really important things. Reality telly. We talked about it yesterday on the show. Kevin and Ian have been mocking me remorselessly. I'm saying earlier, genuinely, we're in bullying territory in our WhatsApp group, I'm telling you, in terms of getting Married at First Sight UK cancelled. Basically, The Bosses Married at First Sight UK is shown on Channel 4 and on E4. It's one of their biggest shows. 3 million people watch it. It's in its 10th series. They have axed the show's next series. It's already been filmed, due to air in September, but they've just finished a series in Australia. Australia was the first and by far the best, it has to be said. But they basically, the 11th series has finished filming last month, and it's not going to be shown because of these allegations from 2 women in the past who claim they've been raped by their partners on the show during time when they're on the show, and another woman who claims an unacceptable sexual act happened. Now, we've got into some of the detail on this yesterday. Again, these are allegations. None of these women have gone to the police. The Met Police have said, like, we do urge women to come forward if they... but we're talking about events that happened behind closed doors, literally behind closed bedroom doors. Women in one of the cases, only one of the cases actually speaking to producers saying that she felt unsafe. One of the couples actually, they were told to leave the series because there were so many concerns about his behaviour. So they did the right thing. I was all on air. I remember watching that series. I've seen every episode, tragically for my sins. It's News or MAFSA for me. Those are my 2 shows, basically. But the woman who's claiming, she was mistreated, she carried on seeing this guy for 6 weeks afterwards. I'm not disputing what the women say, but these are allegations. They're unproven allegations. These men have all said that they did not do what it's claimed they did. No one has gone to the police. There's no investigation. Should the producers be responsible for what happens behind closed doors between an adult man and adult woman who have chosen to put themselves in this scenario?
Having watched none of this, not a single,
we can't be friends anymore,
episode of this. I do think, though, when you look at reality television, that the production company and the channel involved do have a duty of care to the people on that programme. And
where does that duty of care go? Do they literally have to stand in the bedroom to make sure?
No, I don't think they do. But if there are concerns,
but then how can they be?
But if concerns are being raised, and as you say,
and where concerns weren't raised, they acted.
Absolutely. But what they've done is take the decision to remove all of the episodes off and not put anything out as a precaution in case there is a legal case to answer.
They should go and ask all of the women and the men in the series. They just.
I think do any of you
have an allegation of rape or sexual assault? No. Great. Are you okay for us to air this show? Great. Well, then we're going ahead.
And that's what they should do. And I think that they're going about it the right way by just pausing everything and just going, let's get the facts of this straight.
I don't think they'll ever come back on air. No, but my thing is, again, but there's always this ridiculous knee-jerk reaction to these things. And again, we saw Jeremy Kyle's show. I went on ITV. I'd never met Jeremy Kyle. I didn't know he was going to come and work here. And, that show got axed. Whether you like that show or watch that show or not, you don't have to watch a show. It doesn't have to be any of your business whether you watch a show or not. But he got axed and the show got axed over complete lies that claimed that he was in any way, which he was not, and the coroner made this absolutely clear, responsible for a man taking his own life. I mean, it just had nothing whatsoever to do with the show.
No, and I think this is the problem, that people confuse those programmes, the sort of reality TV or the real life type programmes, and they think that they are responsible for absolutely everything. They are a vehicle for something, and people may take some action because of it, but you can't really hold them responsible.
I just think people are grown. I just think grown adults have to ultimately be responsible for themselves. And if something happened that was wrong, they should absolutely have spoken up. I'm horrified if something did happen, and I absolutely want them to get help. And but at the end of the day, if you don't say anything at the time and nothing is done, you can't blame the people. I'm sorry, you just can't. You simply can't. I want my MAFSA back, and it's as simple as that. I genuinely don't see why this. And again, as I put to a media lawyer yesterday, they're basically saying, look, this is intrinsic to the programme. A lot of people who've never seen these shows saying it's intrinsic to the programme. No, it's not. But I would say anorexia for female ballerinas is intrinsic to the ballet that we see. When you see those skinny white women at the Royal Ballet. They're so I'm sorry, that is not healthy. Well, that's intrinsic to the ballet, so we need to cancel ballet. No, they wouldn't do that because that's the sort of high art that they like. So it's
nice things.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's not, it's not low rent like MAFSA. That's what it's snobbery. That's
you
what it
need
is.
to watch Rivals. That'll fill the gap.
See, again, I wouldn't watch that. You see,
it's brilliant.
I want to ask about one other thing. They're telling me we need to go because we need to go to a break. We need to get calls on. But I'm sure you're as intrigued as I am by the unbelievably privacy-craving, privacy-loving Meghan and Harry, who, to mark their 6th wedding anniversary, 6 years we've had of this, 6 years, they decided to put out, you know, just a small statement about how much they love each other and in no way invade any of their own privacy at all. Oh no, I'm completely wrong. He, I'm going to guess mostly she, put out unseen photographs from their wedding. Photographs of them dressed as penguins, because apparently they mate for life, from their engagement party. Put out pictures of him turning up with a cake for her. I mean the amount of intimacy they have chosen to put out for a couple who left Britain so they could live a private life. I mean, does she even know what the word privacy means?
No, maybe we should send her a dictionary, because do we need any more photographs? Do we need that?
Oh, I love to look at them, Claire.
But it's their anniversary. Happy anniversary. Move on. Do you put out overly sort of framed up photographs of your husband?
I hate the fact I can't put out pictures of my husband or my daughter because I want to protect their privacy. Because when I say I want my family to be private, I keep them private. I don't try, you know, sell jam by putting out a picture of my gorgeous daughter. No,
and
I don't.
You haven't stormed out of the country and said that everybody's invading our privacy and we want to live a quiet life, but also please buy our products.
Yeah, exactly. But if someone was to give me a mansion in Montecito, I would happily take that and leave you all for good. I'm sure we could do a crowdfunder for that. Anyway, they're just looking at me and rolling their eyes now. We need to go to a break. We're going to get your calls up next. 0344 499 1000. Megan, if you're just happening to be listening, you want to call in, love to hear from you. This is Talk.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. I just saw a headline. I thought, oh, wow, it's really happening. The headline was, Starmer leaves Downing Street. And then I saw the next words, ahead of PMQs. Got my hopes up then. Claire Pearson. I'm going, it's finally happening. We're rid of him. No, he's just getting in a car, heading to Downing Street to do PMQs. But we'll be taking that live, of course, and talking to Claire Pearson and Peter Cardwell, our analysis of how that goes. I think it's going to be quite a lively one. You want to stay tuned for that here live on Talk. Let's get to your phone calls now. They're 0344 499 1000. The two big topics you want to talk about: cost of living, and particularly this ridiculous idea about some sort of price freeze on essential goods in supermarkets, but also Andy Burnham as well. Ben is in Bristol. Ben, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. Let's cut to the chase. Let's go to the roots. Why can't any government even talk about this? Why don't we not just cut the cap on the fuel duty? Why don't we cut it completely? Cut it by 50%.
Ta-da.
In America, yeah, they pay 15%. They're one of the most prosperous countries in the world. Why are these governments so terrified of doing this? If you did that, okay, yeah, there'd be a hit temporarily, there would. The country would breathe.
Yeah.
The country would breathe. The businesses would breathe. People would go out and start buying things.
Yeah.
But does she want a medal for capping the fuel prices and not raising it again?
Yeah,
it's mad.
No, that's what governments do. We're not going to get rid of the freeze. And again, but this is the thing. They're raking more money in because the price has gone up. But this is the thing. So whenever the government says we need to act on energy bills for people in their homes or fuel costs for moving any businesses, people, everyone around the country on cars and lorries and vans, most of the cost that we're paying is taxes.
Yeah, I know, it's mad. It's completely and utterly bonkers. I'm ashamed of this country. I'm bewildered that we've lived like this. That we can't control, like, the energy costs. That's going to take years to sort out.
Yeah.
Various other things. You could do it in one swipe of the pen. Rachel Reeves tomorrow probably win the election if she did that.
No,
she cut that fuel by 50, well, maybe not, but cut that fuel by 50%. Can you imagine the changes?
Yeah, but again, they'll say we'll lose tax receipts. But as you say, the boom to the economy would be probably greater than that. Ben, look, I'd rather have you in charge than old Rachel Reeves from Accounts with a broken abacus, that's for sure. Thank you for that call. Miranda is in Cumbria. Miranda, you want to have your say on Andy Burnham. What do you want to tell us?
Well, it's just bonkers, isn't it? Bonkers. And the thing is my father did DNA profiling. He taught it. There is XX, XY, and XXY if you're intersex, and they're all seen as being male. And when they say that they're a female in their brain, that's completely wrong because you have a majority of your hormones being produced there. And I just feel that it's quite sinister what they say, and trying to make up that be kind, and it's not, because essentially it's women like us. I'm an XX that will be affected, and it's quite. There are certain places within where I live where the unisex changing room, they have to have boards put at the bottom and bars could have put at the top so that nobody can stand over and take photographs at the top or under the bottom. And it's
it's almost like there was a reason why we had women's loos and men's loos. It's almost like there was a reason, because the vast majority of people who end up getting convicted of sort of perverted crimes or sex assaults are, what a surprise, 99.9% men.
Yes, I don't mind if a man wants to wear a dress. This is the thing.
Whatever you want.
It's just that they can never, ever, ever become a woman. Even if you have all the surgery, you're still XY. If you look for a murderer and you look at the sign, you're looking for the DNA, they won't be looking for a transgender person. They will be looking for a male.
Yeah.
And surely that's simple. And you've got Burnham, who apparently went to Cambridge. How come these people, they all went to some sort of elite university, but they're the complete denial of biology.
But this is the thing, when you're making a scientific explanation, I don't even go down that route anymore. I'm just like, it's not a matter for dispute. It's not a matter of legal dispute. It's not a matter of biological fact to dispute. It is simple. Men cannot become women. Women cannot become men. End of. Nothing to discuss. It doesn't. You can have a piece of paper. You can have all the surgery you want. It doesn't ever happen. And anyone who claims that is the case, I'm treating people with respect and kindness. Yes, but that doesn't extend to handing over women's much-needed rights to those men. That doesn't extend. Our kindness has a limit.
It really does, and it's quite frightening. Years ago, when I was working in a hospital, they did a survey and they wanted specific male and female wards, and they didn't want a mixed ward.
Because women are unsafe in those wards.
No, and the thing is, they felt that they specifically wanted to be an award where there were women. You didn't if you were confused when you woke up.
Yeah.
You didn't start by showing any of your bits, and there was a bloke in the opposite bed. Now, I mean, there shouldn't be mixed wards, but there have been mixed wards in the past.
Plenty of them.
Somebody male, and I know for a fact that there's one particular person who was male, identified as a woman, ended up by raping one of the patients on the ward.
Yep.
Just insanity.
Yeah, no, I'm with you all the way. Miranda, I'm going to have to leave it there. I've got to go to a break. But yeah, I mean, the exasperation in your voice is exactly what we feel. So why are we still talking about this madness? And all these people who've written these books saying, you know, woke is over. Yeah, good luck with that. 11:37 is the time. A quick break, then we'll talk to former Labour Party official Richard Power Said. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:39 is the time. PMQs coming up in 20 minutes time. We'll take that live here on Talk right now. Let's talk about where we are with our political world with Richard Power Said, a former Labour Party official, who's also author of the book 1997, The Future That Never Happened, A History of New Labour. Very good morning to you, Richard.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks.
How are you doing?
Very well indeed. I mean, rather better, I think, than Andy Burnham today. He's facing a little bit of a storm. Lots of criticism of him over these comments he made a few years ago. No reason to think he's changed his view, given comments he's made in the last few months about women, basically, just a supposed feminist, a small minority, apparently, who've got a problem with men using women's toilets. Do you think that's going to go down well on the doorsteps of Makerfield, the by-election he's running in?
On the doorsteps of Makerfield, nobody's talking about this nonsense. They're talking about the cost of living, Julia, just like 95% of the rest of the country.
Oh, and we've been talking about the cost of living as well here, but at the end of the day, people actually do care about things like this. We know Donald Trump used this sort of messaging very, very strongly in his last presidential election. The culture wars may not be the number one issue for people. That's, you know, cost of living, and then you've got immigration, you've got issues like the NHS. But actually, it is a signifier of where a politician is on the spectrum, I would say, of sanity and honesty, if they think that that women-only spaces should be handed over to men in dresses.
Well, if you think Donald Trump is sane and honest, then I've got several years of political history for you.
What's that got to do with the point I made in terms of actually it does appear that voters do care about that? We were told it's all cost of living in America as well. It's not just cost of living. It's not just immigration.
I was responding to the point you made about Donald Trump's political strategy. It seemed like a reasonable response to me, and I think it was. Look, if you want to push this as your political strategy, if Nigel Farage's mates think that the way to distract from taxing billionaire donors is to talk about trans people, then you know what? I think for the left, this is an absolute win, because we're going to carry on talking about the cost of living and taxing donors, taxing billionaires, and you're going to carry on talking about toilets and genitals, and the country is with us.
It's funny how women seem to care more about these things than men, isn't it? I wonder why.
No, that's not true. You just said that. That's actually a lie, isn't it? Because you know perfectly well that women are far more supportive of trans rights than men are.
Well, apart from there's some polling. It depends how you ask the question, doesn't it? Because actually, when you actually
no, it's really consistent, and it's consistent around the world as well. And around the world, the countries that have got the strongest rights for women have the strongest place for the strongest rights for trans people.
Do you want those men in the toilets with your 5-year-old daughter? Trust me, women don't. They really, really don't.
What women want is the same as everyone else, which is a relentless focus on the cost of living.
And their safety.
And you guys are trying to distract us because you don't want us to
let's talk about
billionaire media owners.
Richard, if you're under the illusion, I want to distract from that. By the way, reform, when it comes to, for instance, their £5 million donation, I've been talking about that with every single reform representative we've had on. We don't shy away from any stories on this station or on this show.
But we know why Nigel Farage wants us to talk about toilets and genitals, don't we? It's because he wants us not to talk about his £5 million donation.
Are you under the illusion? I got a message this morning from Reform saying, can you talk about this? I talk about the stuff I care about.
Farage is interested in talking about, because you were talking to me about strategy and Donald Trump, and I'm talking about strategy and Donald Trump. I have no idea what Reform
are going to campaign on. I'm pretty sure it's not on this. I am a woman, and I and most women care about our safety and our daughter's safety. So I'm sorry, I raised this with you first because I think that is an issue specific to Andy Burnham in this particular by-election, although the Green candidate's probably insane on it as well. Let's talk about the cost of living, because we've had Karl Turner, independent MP now, talking about how this idea of having some sort of deal with the supermarkets for them to basically be asked to freeze prices of essential goods. Milk, eggs and bread are the items that are mentioned. Not going so far as a compulsory price cap, as John Swinney, the SNP leader and new First Minister of Scotland, has proposed for 50 essential goods in Scottish supermarkets. Karl Turner called this the balmiest idea he's heard. The chief executive of Marks and Spencer, Stuart Mackin, has said that the supermarket price cap is a preposterous idea, completely preposterous, he says, and said the government should not be trying to run a business. What do you think of this plan?
I think it probably isn't going to be implemented. I think it's Rachel Reeves floating an idea to try to take the wind out of the sails of both John Swinney and indeed Andy Burnham. Ultimately, price caps on essential foodstuffs are very successful in lots of countries that have got much higher growth than we do. But you know what? Businesses don't like being told what to do they? And they donate very heavily to lots of politicians in order to ensure it doesn't happen.
Excuse my ignorance, but I know where there are price caps. I've been to places like Cuba where there are price caps and people can't buy anything in the shops. Which successful, functional, wealthy economy has price caps on essential food?
Most emerging markets, which have got far higher growth rates than us.
Well, they've got high growth rates because they're coming up from nothing. Which successful, wealthy, functioning economy has price caps? The answer is no.
America has price caps on housing. America has price caps on housing. And we've got price caps on energy, and they've got price caps on energy. Price caps are actually a very normal part of how most capitalist economies work.
Supermarkets. We have
So suddenly it's like a totally different sector. At first it was like nobody does this. Then it's like, oh, nobody does it in supermarkets. Oh, then it was like, no, people who have like very specific kinds of growth rates don't do it.
Price caps, Richard. And then you said there are plenty of countries where this works. So not unsurprisingly, I thought you were talking about food price caps in supermarkets. That's what we were talking about.
I did, and I gave you some examples, and then you said they weren't good ones, so I gave you some more examples of price caps working in advanced capitalist societies.
I asked you for an example of a successful economy where saying a country's got high growth. I mean, North Korea can have high growth tomorrow if they just started having a half-steady economy and people could have enough to eat. That wouldn't make it a successful economy. Your notion of a successful economy and mine are very, very different. Right, OK. You're saying this happens in other economies, it's fine. The reality is we have a very competitive supermarket marketplace, haven't we? I mean, loads of supermarkets, lots of choice. For unless you live in absolutely the middle of nowhere. We have a lot of price matching. Supermarkets make a profit margin around the 3 to 4%. They make a lot of money because they sell a hell of a lot of stuff to us that we want to buy. Why is Rachel Reeves even starting a conversation with supermarkets, the most successful competitive businesses we've got, delivering for the British people? Why is she even thinking about having a conversation with them where she says, oh, we'll do a trade-off on some of the other things that we used to make you have a higher cost in return for you doing this for us? Why is she getting involved if this is such a stupid idea?
Because the British people, you think it's a stupid idea. I think that Rachel Reeves is feeling the pressure to do more on the cost of living, and she's feeling that way because Andy Burnham is putting pressure on the government to do that, even before he's even started being the Makerfield, before the by-election campaign has begun. So you know what? I think good for him. He's pushing British politics in the right direction.
But one of the biggest costs we've got, actually, a lot of these come from wars and the impact on fuel, the energy costs that businesses and individuals face, the fuel costs. We understand we are going to get a decision from the Chancellor where she's going to keep that freeze on fuel duty. But a lot of people are pointing out the government is making a hell of a lot more money than going into Treasury coffers from that increase in oil prices and gas prices, and they're making money with their VAT and their fuel duty. If she wants to cut prices for people, cut VAT, cut fuel duty, cut the taxes.
Costs an enormous amount to look after kids in hospital who've got asthma. It costs an enormous amount to build roads. Costs an enormous amount to get rid of potholes. I think we should carry on taxing that.
Okay, but if you want to tackle the cost of living, then you can she should be tackling the actual costs that people face rather than messing around with supermarkets that already have massively competitive markets which keep prices lower than they otherwise would be.
I mean, the Labour government's policy is actually basically to subsidise supermarkets into doing this because they would cut the taxes that they would otherwise be paying.
But
on
they wouldn't
future
subsidise them. They're just not going to have they'd take away some of the costs. The supermarkets are basically saying, no, we're not interested. But I find it strange. I know we've got costs. We have the NHS, but we also have lots of things that we perhaps don't need to have, which, for instance, this massively ballooning welfare bill for working age people. There are plenty of things that the government spends money on which could be cut, but Labour doesn't want to, apparently, certainly the backbenchers don't want to cut those things. You don't have to not treat a child with asthma in hospital or not fill a pothole in return for cutting fuel duty. You could argue that cutting fuel duty would boost the economy, wouldn't it? Might bring in more taxes long term.
Yeah, I mean, obviously people who pay higher taxes because they're super rich want us to cut taxes and tell us it's going to cause loads of growth. Hasn't worked before, not going to work again.
Well, it has worked repeatedly.
What it does sometimes do is it creates more wealth for the super rich.
Fuel duty.
That's a really nice thing for the super rich. It's not how you improve things for the rest of the country. I'm not talking about cutting tax
for the super rich. I'm talking about fuel duty, that people who drive their cars to work, get their kids to school, the 80% of people who use their cars and have no other option in their daily lives, the people who go out every day and work as, plumbers and builders and cleaners who need their vehicles. Every single vehicle that carries food to our shops, cutting fuel duty would help everybody. I didn't mention the super rich.
The idea that when you cut taxes, it stimulates the economy is like a kind of joke bit of economics that everyone has now recognised hasn't worked for the West. That's one of the reasons the West has been declining. We haven't been investing in our industry and our manufacturing. And what you need is a government that's going to say, let's use the power of the state to start investing. That's how we bring jobs back into this country.
We need more state interference.
That's what Andy Burnham and indeed, people on the left Labour Party have been saying for years. And finally, it might actually be happening. I'm really delighted.
Good luck with that, everybody. Richard, you disappointed me today. We're definitely in election mode. Richard Power-Sayi, thank you for that. We're going to go to a quick break. Then we're going to be hearing from independent economist Julian Jessup. I'm hoping he was listening to that because I have a funny feeling he might disagree with quite a lot of it. He's up next. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Well, that conversation with our good friend Richard Parasite got a bit tetchy, didn't it? I think we can safely say we definitely agreed to disagree at the end of that, or disagreed to disagree. But Julia Jessup joins us now as an independent economist. Julia Jessup, wanted to talk to you about this supermarket price cap that's being proposed. I'm sure I think you were listening to what Richard Parasite said. First of all, are there any successful economies in the country in the world that do actually have routinely, price caps on goods that people buy in? The conversation was about supermarkets and on foodstuffs.
Well, there are actually a few. Your previous guest didn't know about this, but Switzerland is an example that's often cited. Quite a lot of sort of basic foodstuffs have their prices controlled there. But that's not a great example because food prices in Switzerland are relatively high and supermarkets are relatively profitable. So that's, I would argue, an example where
doesn't really work. I've not spent much time in Switzerland, partly because it is so unbelievably expensive. So I'm not sure that would be a good example for most of us. That's very interesting. Okay, so and in terms of taxes going on now, we were talking about things like fuel duty, because my argument would actually be, look, the market is working very well in supermarkets in terms of that. They not only they do loss leaders like milk. I'd rather they paid the dairy farmers more and made sure that farmers actually got their fair share. But if those supermarkets are cutting costs to compete with other supermarkets, we're all benefiting from that, and they make a very low profit margin, 3 to 4%. Make a lot of money in big terms because they sell a lot of stuff to us that we want to buy. But is the answer to our cost of living problems messing around with what the price of a loaf of bread is in Tesco, or is it things like cutting fuel duty and VAT on fuel?
Well, starting with the supermarkets, you're absolutely right. It's one of the most competitive sectors in the economy, and it's not as if supermarkets are raising prices because they suddenly become greedy. It's because their costs are massively increased. That is partly a consequence of the fallout from the Iran war, but it's also because of lots of things that the government itself is doing on business rates, on the cost of employing people, on energy prices and so on. So if the government is serious about getting food prices down, that's where it should focus, on the cost side, not bashing supermarkets. More generally, I think the problem is the government is always looking for these sort of populist interventions that might lower one or two prices, but end up increasing prices elsewhere in the economy. Instead, the government should step back and look at the supply side performance of the economy. Make more of the resources that we have, and North Sea oil and gas is a perfect example of this. We should be making more of the resources we have there rather than importing it. As far as cutting fuel duty is concerned, I'm a little bit less enthusiastic on that in this particular case, because I think it's right that when the global prices are high, that should be reflected in the prices that people have to pay. But the bigger
because otherwise the market doesn't work.
But the bigger picture is that regardless of the crisis we're having at the moment, I think fuel duty is far too high. Your previous guest mentioned the need to, pay for things like roads and so on, and some of the sort of negative externalities, some of the things like pollution and congestion that driving causes. But even if you factored all of those into the appropriate level of tax, it would still be an awful lot lower than the current levels of tax that motorists pay.
Fuel duty and VAT, the costs we get, the taxes on motorists generally, whether they're lorry drivers or driving their kids to school, they are funding a heck of a lot of the rest of the economy, aren't they, in terms of government spending?
Yes, exactly. So if you take fuel duty, it's I think 55p a litre at the moment. I think an appropriate level for fuel duty is probably nearer 20p. To take account of the costs involved in.
And that would make a massive difference to people who rely on their cars in terms of their outgoings, in terms of the cost of the fuel that is used to transport the goods that we buy. That would have an instant knock-on effect, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. Obviously, it would also mean that the government is making a lot less revenue from fuel, and it's not as if people are going to suddenly start driving their cars 20 times two times as much as they would otherwise have done. So I think you would have to offset that elsewhere. But you could do that by cutting spending rather than just raising.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting, and again, something Richard Bowside was saying about, taxes on the wealthy, that's why they don't like Labour. I mean, do wealth taxes work? I mean, people who are very wealthy in this country, 45 pence a top rate of tax. I think Andy Burnham talked about a 50p top rate of tax. I mean, we've had that before. We had it under the Tories, didn't we? I mean, would that make a difference to the tax tank?
Well, not really. We've already actually got some of the highest taxes on wealth broadly defined of any of the major economies. It's just that we don't have a specific tax on wealth itself. And interestingly, those countries that do have a specific tax have either dropped it over the last decade or so because it actually ends up costing money, or they set it at a far lower level than some of the advocates of this policy in the UK are talking about. So again, it's not just economic theory here, it's sort of the real world experience in other countries and in the UK.
The sort of people who make the sort of money that could be taxed at that level are ridiculously, especially in the modern technological world, are ridiculously mobile, and when they say they'll leave, they really, really do.
Oh, absolutely. There's mounting evidence of that happening. A lot of people, the moment they set up a successful business, they move out of the UK and actually out of the European Union as quickly as they possibly can.
And then we lose all of their tax revenue instead of that extra bit that we would have got. And again, I'd love to be one of those people. I'd be very happy to be one of those people. But I've got quite a lot of sympathy for quite a lot of them on that front. Lots more to talk about. Julia Jessup, thank you so much for joining us. It's short but sweet. Up next, we're going to have PMQs, Claire Pearsall and Peter Carl are going to be here to give analysis. I think it's going to be a lively one. Stay tuned for that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past midday is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to PMQs.
Mr. Speaker, this is not our war, but while the parties opposite wanted to jump into it, Labour will always protect working people.
Yeah. Leader of the opposition, Kemi Beno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to associate myself with the words of the Prime Minister regarding the tragic death of Lance Bombardier Kira Sullivan. We send our condolences to her family for this terrible loss. I welcome some of what the Prime Minister has said on fuel duty. Yes, it's still a freeze, but we asked him about this on the 11th of March and the 25th of March, and he said he wasn't going to do it. So thank you for the U-turn. Thank you for the U-turn. Labour MPs are shaking their heads. It would make more sense if they just did what we were doing, because they get there in the end anyway. But, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Labour MPs voted to ban new British oil and gas licences. Why?
Well, Mr. Speaker, in relation to fuel duty, under the plans that we inherited, fuel duty was due to go up by 5% in April. We stopped that, and they voted against it. We're now extending the freeze because of events in the Middle East. And I know the Leader of the Opposition likes to claim responsibility for things that have got literally nothing to do with her. In her mind, she won Eurovision on Saturday and scored the winning goal in the FA Cup final. But she's never takes any responsibility for what they did for 14 long years. Mr. Speaker, in relation to oil and gas is coming out of the North Sea 24/7. It will play an important role for many years to come. We're supporting existing oil and gas fields throughout their lifespan. We made changes actually in November to allow neighbouring fields to be exploited. But families across the UK are fed up with their bills going up and down because of global conflict. The only way to take control is through renewables. Mr. Speaker, we've now consented renewables to power 23 million households. The Leader of the Opposition wants to stick with the old Tory energy policy, which is leaving households exposed to higher bills year after year.
Mr. Speaker, what's causing problems for British consumers is the high energy prices which are caused by his policies. I asked him why they voted for this. He had no answer. So let me make clear what is going on. We are losing 1,000 jobs a month in oil and gas. I asked him about new licences, not about existing drilling. And then, late last night, Mr. Speaker, the government snuck out an announcement that it was removing sanctions on Russian oil. So can the Prime Minister explain why oil from Russia is acceptable, but oil from Aberdeen is not?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me address the sanctions head-on, because we have been united across this House on these issues since the beginning of the conflict. What we announced yesterday was a strong new package of new sanctions, going well beyond existing sanctions. So it's a new package. This includes new bans on maritime services on LNG and new bans on refined oil products from Russia. We also issued 2 targeted short-term licences to phase the new sanctions in and to protect UK consumers. Mr. Speaker, that is standard practice. This government has phased in sanctions in this way before, and the last government used exactly the same technique when they introduced sanctions. And when they did so, Mr. Speaker, we supported them because we could see the sanctions were the right thing to do to bear down on Russia. So these are new sanctions being phased in. This is not a question of lifting existing sanctions in any way whatsoever, and we will continue to work with our allies on further sanction packages.
This very weak set of cheers from the MPs who are trying to get rid of him, could I just say. Mr. Speaker, he doesn't know what he is talking about. This level of processology is not going to get him out of these difficult answers, okay? Let me tell him what is going on. Labour are giving money to Russia. Reform are taking money from Russia. There's only one party that is standing up to Russia, and that is the Conservative Party. I cannot believe that he's actually saying that he's doing something good on the war in Ukraine. What's he talking about? This morning, Ukraine's sanction chief disagrees with what the Prime Minister's approach is. That's what Ukraine is saying. In March, when the United States eased sanctions on Russia, the Prime Minister said all partners should maintain pressure on Russia and its war chest. The Prime Minister said our sanctions remain, and there is no question about that. What's changed?
I really think on an issue of this importance, which is about further sanctions on Russia in relation to Ukraine, it is really important that the position is not misrepresented.
Exactly.
This is a new package of sanctions. None of the existing sanctions are being lifted in any way. So this is not less pressure on Russia, it is more pressure on Russia. More pressure than there was the day before yesterday, more pressure than there was under the last government. What is happening is that those sanctions are being phased in a way which was used by the last government when they introduced new sanctions. We bothered to do the processology and work out what we were doing and supported it because we could see that it put more pressure on Russia. Similar methods are used by other countries. They are done because of the impact on the market and to protect UK consumers. These are new sanctions putting more pressure on Russia, and I think if she'd done her homework, she'd actually support us on this.
Mr. Speaker, being patronising is not a substitute for understanding policy. And I've heard this term. Mr. Speaker, I've heard this tone before. This is the same tone he used during the Mandelson scandal, and they were all cheering, and then it turned out that he was wrong, wrong, wrong. He says that other countries are doing this. The EU is not doing this. Let me make it clear. I know it hurts him to hear it. He is now choosing to buy dirty Russian oil. That money will be used to fund the killing of Ukrainian soldiers. Isn't he ashamed?
I really think that to misunderstand and misrepresent what is happening, this is a very serious issue where we're working with others. These are new bans, they're new sanctions, they're new bans on maritime services on LNG as of yesterday. They're new bans on refined oil products from Russia as of yesterday. They are being phased in the same way that previous sanctions regimes have been phased in, exactly in the way the last government did and we have done. Other countries do exactly the same. The EU has its own way of doing it. Australia and Canada have their own way of doing it. And to play party politics on Ukraine, where we have stood firm, and the only people that benefit when we play party politics in here on Russia and Ukraine is Putin.
Mr. Speaker, that pompous tone does not cover for the fact that he has got his policy all wrong. I have asked him about oil and gas again and again and again. The last time he told me that it was the Energy Secretary's job and it had nothing to do with him. That's what's destroying this country. It's not playing politics. It's speaking up for the people who are out there. The fact is, more people are buying Russian oil because British oil isn't being drilled. He's sanctioning British oil, but not Russian oil. And he should be ashamed, Mr. Speaker. He should be ashamed. I cannot believe that this Prime Minister, even when he has nothing to lose, continues to defend banning new British oil and gas licences. In April, Britain saw the single biggest drop in employment ever since the pandemic. Wow. That's under them. Yep. 210,000 people have lost their jobs in the last year. What he is doing is going to cost thousands more people their jobs, especially in cities like Aberdeen, which rely on oil and gas. So can he tell us, why is he doing everything to save his job and doing nothing to save other people's jobs?
Mr. Speaker, there is drilling in the North Sea, and on her, she said there's no drilling in the North Sea. She said, "Going to have to refer herself to the Privileges Committee, Mr. Speaker." There is drilling. It's 24/7, and oil and gas are coming out, and that will be important for many, many years to come. We are supporting those existing oil and gas fields throughout their lifespan. We made changes in November to allow neighbouring fields to be exploited. But it is because we are on the international market that our prices of businesses and households go up every time there's an international conflict. We saw it with Ukraine, or we saw it with Iran. And people are fed up with a government, the last government, that didn't take control of their bills. We're taking control of their bills. The way to do that is through renewables, and that's what we're doing.
Kevin Bennett.
Mr. Speaker, it gets worse and worse. He doesn't understand the policy. I am asking him about new oil and gas licenses, which they voted against yesterday. If they had approved those licenses for Jackdaw and Rosebank like we did, we would have that oil in this country now. We would. And just listen to him, and I wonder if he is okay. He is so deep in the bunker, Mr. Speaker. He's importing sanctioned Russian oil. He's nationalising steel. He's imposing price controls in the supermarket. It's like the Soviets won. This country needs a government that has got its act together, Mr. Speaker. Instead, what we have is a Prime Minister hanging by a thread, fake support from his backbenchers, too scared to take difficult decisions, losing his moral compass by backsliding on Ukraine. Yes, he is. Mr. Speaker, look, the shakes of their head are so feeble. It's so feeble. He has got... They can... It's absolutely laughable, Mr. Speaker. It's absolutely laughable. Yesterday, we saw them huddled in the corridors talking about Andy Burnham and West Streeting. The fact is, he's got a cabinet fighting to replace him, and the worst part is, they aren't getting rid of him over his terrible agenda. No, they actually like it. They just want a better salesman. So isn't it the case, Mr. Speaker, that it doesn't matter who replaces him, the real problem is the Labour Party?
Mr. Speaker.
I think not, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, look, a lot's been happening in recent days, so she may have overlooked the fact that last week the ONS announced we've got the fastest growing economy in the G7. Last week we had the biggest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years. Today inflation's come down more than expected. And Mr. Speaker, if you'd offered me that and Arsenal becoming Premier League champions, I'd take it every day of the week.
Right, well, we'll leave PMQs there. And, of course, I think no one's surprised the Prime Minister, an avid Arsenal fan, doesn't like to pay for his tickets at Arsenal, though, just like the rest of the fans. But there we are. The ones who actually have to pay a fortune to go and see their team. But we knew he would be mentioning the Arsenal winning the Premiership last night. I weren't even playing, but as a result of the way the other results went. And by the way, most of my family are Arsenal, so they're a very happy bunch, apart from the ones who are married to Spurs fans, who are going to have a few marital difficulties in the coming weeks, I fear. Anyway, I know big avid football fan, Pete Cardwell, looking at me in absolute horror, joining us in the studio. We went straight to PMQs rather quicker than we normally do. Actually got on with it this week. Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor, joining me still for the rest of the show, and talk presenter Peter Cardwell in to talk about PMQs. I think, chaps, we knew it would be a lively one, didn't we? Because basically, come on, the Tories and everyone else can consent that blood has been taken. Look, no one other than perhaps the Prime Minister thinks that Prime Minister is going to be lasting in this job. Whether or not Andy Burnham wins the by-election in Makerfield or not on June the 18th, he's going to carry on stumbling forward. I mean, look, I think we were discussing, thought he would already have been, possibly given a timetable for departure by now. I don't know how it's still carrying on, but it is. In terms of PMQs, Kemi Badenoch, I mean, it was a fairly obvious thing to go on, really, wasn't it? Mentioning the supermarkets, the price caps, but mostly going on the issue of the fuel duty freeze, but also, I mean, this issue of the bizarre decision to say, look, we will have no new licences for British oil and gas in the North Sea, but we will basically allow what should be sanctioned oil from Russia to be sold to this country, funding the Russian war effort against Ukraine. I mean, as she said, he's lost his moral compass. It does seem utterly bizarre.
A brilliant question from Kemi Badenoch. I would have actually done it as a standalone question rather than as part of a longer question when she said, very simply, we'll accept Russian oil. Russian oil is fine, but oil from Aberdeen isn't. Why? And that was really, really effective. She also said this was again slightly lost, but just in regard to what you're talking about with Makerfield and the machinations around the Labour leadership, she said is the Prime Minister okay?
Yeah.
That was, I would have done that as a standalone question as well, actually.
You okay, hon?
Are you okay, hon? Yeah, exactly. Arsenal may have won by 3 wickets or whatever it is, but well done to them.
He's got a job on talkSPORT.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Jason Cundy, watch out. But I do think that Kemi Badenoch, that was a really, really good performance by her. I thought there were a lot of really good points that she made about dirty Russian oil. I think a lot of the nuance will be lost there. And actually, when you're explaining you're losing, he was trying to explain, failing, and her attacks just kept coming.
And he really did go into what Kemi Badenoch, Claire Pearsall, called processology. And he loves processology. Oh, you should be referred to the Privileged Committee. I mean, mate, you've been referred, I mean, It wasn't. He wasn't on the wickets. He was on a fairly sticky wicket, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. When you bring out things about dirty Russian money and the Soviets won because he wants to nationalise steel, which is a very good line. And what he does in return is become ever more process, bullet points, looking into the detail, tries to be funny and just absolutely falls flat.
I've got to be honest with you, watching and listening to that, my main thought the whole way through was, other than the always, make it stop. It's just my whenever I'm listening to him. But the fact that realistically, he's going to be gone from public life in a few months. Worst case scenario, in a few months' time. Yeah. We're not going to have to endure him anymore. I genuinely find him intolerable.
But will Andy Burnham be any better?
You can listen to his voice.
Well, that's true. But I saw Andy Burnham make a speech the other day. I just thought, you're not a great public speaker. You're not this panacea. It's not all going to be marvellous.
Oh no, they are basically, the Labour Party have just got into their head that this guy is like a sort of
Jesus.
Can walk on water. Yeah, exactly. It is quite extraordinary. I mean, that issue about the dirty Russian oil. At the end of the day, an awful lot of British people, Claire, are going to be saying, you know what? I don't care. I just want cheaper fuel. I just want cheaper fuel because I can't afford to get to work and back. I can't afford to run my business.
Yeah, and they want the government to sort that out. They want the government to make strides to reduce fuel duty even further, not just freeze it, but actually reduce it, but so to make a fundamental difference to the price at the pump. And what they also want is the ability to drill the oil and gas that we already
will take a long time, but these are decisions you need to take for the next time.
Exactly, and just get on with it. Yeah. And I think that's the problem, and that was the vote that Kemi Badenoch was referring to, which was the Conservative motion against the King's speech, which was a vote held yesterday.
It's a bit processology for you there, folks. Peter, I mean, at the end of the day, though, and this is something I've been going on about for a very long time, but we have a general public, we have voters, and I'm sure I'm among them in terms of the same problem where we go, I don't want a tax on that because that's something that affects me. I want a tax on those wealthy people over there. Well, they're already paying a hell of a lot of tax. If you tax them anymore, they leave. We know that because that's what happens in every country where they do that, and every time our country tries to do that. But at the end of the day, people say, I want to have a tax cut. Yeah, cut fuel duty, great. But a hell of a lot of money that goes into Treasury coffers does come from the petrol pumps. And if you remove some of that, which very strong argument for doing that, for freeing up the economy and cutting prices, but you're going to have to get that money from somewhere else, unless you either tax more, you borrow more, or you spend less. Yeah. And the reality is, any government, whether it's Starmer, whether it's Burnham, whether it's Wes Streeting, whether it's Kemi Badenoch, whether it's Nigel Farage, or God forbid Zach Polanski or Ed Davey, at the end of the day, they still got that. You have three choices.
Well, there's a fourth option, actually, which is you move it from somewhere else. Could it be that our huge welfare bill could possibly come down if we took some of that money and put it into other bits, like maybe tax relief, lowering taxes, or maybe even defence or something like that, if you reallocated money?
No, reallocated, spending less.
Yeah, well, fair point.
That's
but
like spending less.
You spend the same amount with somewhere else as well.
The reality, and again, we come back to Andy Burnham on, on Transgender. There are some things which, you can believe what you want, you can hope what you want, but the facts don't change.
Yes.
And that's the basic problem.
You're absolutely right, and I do think that most people won't know the nuances of Russian oil or sanctions or whatever.
Most MPs listening there didn't know.
Well, exactly. I'm not sure even Keir Starmer did. But we're in a situation where people want life not to be perfect or simple or easy, but just a little bit less hard than it is, because it's really, really difficult out there for so many people. Also, can I just put my tinfoil hat on for a minute? I wonder if this is tinfoil hat or whether it isn't. Right. I was just thinking, Richard Walker, right? He's the head of Iceland. He's the government's cost of living advisor. We're in a situation where they want to lower prices on bread, milk, things that aren't frozen.
Aren't frozen good. Oh, there we are. I mean, it is very interesting. The M&S chief, Stuart Machin, he has said that basically that the retailer already makes a loss on bread and bananas and other basics, and he's described Rachel Reeves' plan for a supermarket price caps as completely preposterous. It was basically sort of undermined by the Treasury Minister coming out today saying there were no plan for compulsory price freezes. But again, we did hear, though, that was confirmation from the Prime Minister at PMQs today. That was the big story today, really. He's announced he will freeze fuel duty for the rest of the year. They had planned to raise the tax. It's been frozen for 15 years by 5p a litre in September. They announced that they would do that from April, but I think we all knew it wasn't going to happen anyway. It's politically impossible.
They floated the test balloon, and it's been panned by all these people. And then they're going, well, it's not compulsory.
Yeah.
No one's going to do it.
No, Can I just point out also how bad they are at communications and working out the grid. I mean, Peter will know as well that the grid is the sacrosanct piece of information to get this stuff out.
No, it's the big announcement. Like, what's your big set piece announcement?
Each department, and each department. So what they've done is, right, let's do the freeze on fuel duty. That's brilliant, and then we'll chuck out we're going to release the sanctions on Russian oil and gas, in hopes that one would cancel out the other,
no one
one would notice.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that, especially on the day before PMQs. So it lands on the morning of PMQs and you're expecting someone not to notice it, and your good news is the fuel free.
But hold on a minute, the really big news surely is Gemma Collins from I think the only way is Essex. I mean, you know, I look, I love my Married at First Sight, but I don't go that far down the list. Was in talking to Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson yesterday.
Do you know
That's the important business of government.
I've watched The Only Way is Essex on a number of occasions.
That's just not surprising.
And Gemma Collins has often said, do you know what I mean? And do you know what? I've always known what she has meant. I haven't had to work out what she's meant. I do know what she means.
I actually rather like her. I think she was rather adorable in this latest I'm a Celebrity. I'm sorry, I love my trash telly. You've got to have some. I can't do politics all the time. I've got to have some.
You can't always read The Economist.
Can't read. Try not to read The Economist. So I want to know something. No, but she, you know, she comes across perfectly well. But she said she's got a G. She got a G in her maths GCSE, and the Education Secretary's spending time talking to her. I just don't think she's the person you need to be talking to about education.
It was utterly weird. And also, what's the message from that? Is it become
no one knows.
Is it become a celebrity? Is it do things better? No, when the GC met the BP in Bridget Phillipson, it was just totally odd. It was just odd. It didn't sit
As I
well.
pointed out, this is just not a serious government. It's as simple as that. Right, when are you next on, my lovely?
7 o'clock this evening.
7 o'clock tonight. Stay tuned. Peter Cobble, 7 o'clock tonight. Thank you as always for your analysis. Claire Pierce will staying with me. Right now, though, I've got a competition for you. The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, and thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at talkSPORT are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England versus Croatia live on June the 17th with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and your very own Adidas official match ball. Try on. Be at England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get to your calls now. Lots of you getting in touch about that price cap on supermarkets and, of course, all fuel duty and all of that. Getting in touch on 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Andrew, who's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. How are you today?
Really good, and you're really on good form this week. You've been really top draw. Well done, especially yesterday. No, you really have.
Bless you, Andrew.
The whole supermarket thing is beyond insanity. The reality of it is, in COVID, the government allowed the supermarket to share their supply chain.
Yeah.
And what that did was it enabled them to drive down the amount of lorry journeys.
Yeah.
That's the sort of pragmatic thing you should do, but keep the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Farmers tell me that a litre of diesel to them at the moment is £2.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can stop that feeding through.
No, into everything.
Act like leaders. Go to people and see what you can do to enable them to sell things quicker and cheaper.
I don't think that the government has any business telling organisations like Tesco or Sainsbury or Waitrose or anybody who run unbelievably slick systems every single day. I don't think the government has anybody, whether it's a civil servant or a politician or anybody else, who is remotely qualified to tell these organisations how to run their business any better. On the contrary, I would quite like the bloke who makes sure that when out of the blue it's a sunny Saturday, we all want to have barbecues, that randomly on Friday night all of the barbecue food suddenly appears in the supermarket. I want that bloke or that woman to run the country, because I reckon they'd be better at it.
And that's where you're really on top of your game. You said they're like a sixth form running the country. The head of education, that individual she brought out yesterday, where was Denise Lewis? Where was Sharon Davis? Where was Fatima Whitbread? Where was Mary Peters? All women that have achieved something and could give a better message. And we brought out someone,
Gemma Collins,
reality star. Give me...
It's an absolute embarrassment. It really is. Andrew, thank you for that. Andrew in Hertfordshire there. And Martin is in North Wales. Martin, you want to have a comment on pretty much the main topic from Kemi Badenoch's questions, the PMQs, don't you, about this loosening of sanctions on Russian oil?
Yeah, very much so. Starmer, as usual, very economical with the truth, to say the least. What he's doing is allowing sanctioned Russian oil tankers to flow past the UK, all the way around to India, get refined oil in terms of diesel and jet fuel, and buy it from Indian middlemen companies and import it back to the UK, and thus finance Putin's war and direct military threats against the UK, while at the same time sending thousands of British jobs down the river.
Yeah, it's utterly insane. That line from Kemi Badenoch, like, why is Russian oil okay but not Aberdeen oil? I mean, that was a great line.
There's another aspect not yet really uncovered, but it's heading our way. Last weekend, Trump put full sanctions back on Russian oil after waiving it.
Yeah.
And that means we will be running straight into American secondary sanctions if we're not careful by importing this stuff from India. What's that going to do to the British economy? When we get 25, 30, 40% tariffs slapped on?
Yeah, very, very, very good point. I'm hoping they've squared that with Trump already, but I've always said we're going to do the sanctions, do it properly, absolutely, and also again those secondary sanctions. Why? And again, India. If India wants to choose Russia and China over the West, that's fine. We know the score, but you're no longer a friendly state. You're a hostile state, and that's the end of the matter, and should be treated as such.
Yeah, we've also got a refinery in Lincolnshire that was mothballed, that did jet fuel. Only in January this year that can be reopened in Lincolnshire. The Praxol refinery.
Absolute madness.
Why not reopen that and have that refining fuel from raw oil coming out of Guyana?
Martin, I despair. Thank you so much for that call. Brilliant stuff. 12:34 is the time. By the way, it's very interesting. We were talking earlier about Andy Burnham and his stance and apparently all these supposed feminists, as he called us. I've got a T-shirt already saying a supposed feminist. This tiny minority of women who are concerned about men claiming to be women entering our toilets. He's the former Dragon's Den judge, very successful businessman, Duncan Bannatyne. He's posted on X, last week I decided to throw my support behind Andy Burnham for leadership of the Labour Party and on to Prime Minister. But I cannot do that now. I find out he says trans women, i.e. men, should be allowed to use the ladies' toilet. I can never support anyone that does this. Biological women must have single-sex spaces. Duncan Bannatyne, thank you very, very much for standing up for women and girls and our safety and our dignity and our privacy. We need more like you. And to help with all the people who say this is not an issue for a lot of people, I think you'll find it is. Sanity and caring about these basic things is actually a really, really good indicator of whether you want someone in a job or not. 12:35 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking to Tom Sharp, OBE, former Royal Navy commander, about those oil sanctions and what is going on in the Iran conflict. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. Well, let's talk more about these loosening of Russian oil sanctions by the UK as fuel prices rise, and a NATO mission being considered to try and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Let's talk about this all with Tom Sharp, OBE, a former Royal Navy commander, who joins us once again. A very good afternoon to you, Tom.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Well, big scrap at PMQs between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, over these loosening of these Russian oil sanctions. There's no doubt at all that every single drop of oil or gas that Russia can sell, whether it's to, the countries that have sanctioned to them directly or via a third party like India, once it's refined and then sold on, that boosts their basically their war chest, does it not, to fund their fighting in Ukraine? Will this directly fund the killing of Ukrainian, not just soldiers, but civilians too?
Yes, it will. I mean, there is no doubt about that. The issue is, and of course this is why the Conservatives are making political hay, is they're able to hit the Labour Party with a stick that's been 20 to 30 years in the making. I mean, it's a bit like the Navy. We're in a terrible state, but that's because we've neglected this for so long. We've neglected the underpinnings and the strategic resilience of our own oil and gas industry to the point where we become vulnerable in this way. I mean, and the easing of the sanctions in this case, it's pragmatic. The Americans are doing it all the time. So your previous person saying that they may impose secondary tariffs on us, that is not correct. They've been granting licenses all the time. It's very pragmatic. It's also, it's probably a VTOL or a BP leaning on the government going, look, we need to get this oil to our allies, whether it's the Philippines or Turkey, they seem to be, or India, sorry, these are likely options. So there's a little bit of politicking going on there. And importantly, we mustn't let China backfill this void. So to me, it's really bad. It is providing money to Putin's war chest, but it's also kind of unavoidable because of the corner we've backed ourselves
into. And that's the thing, isn't it? And this is where, having reliable, secure energy supplies is part of our national security. I mean, we can have an opinion on climate change. Doesn't matter. The reality is we need to have secure, reliable energy that to function as a nation state. And we've seen the power that has been able to be used by Iran, holding the world to ransom, completely undermining the US's attempts to take on Iran by the fact that they simply just have to say they've mined or threatened to hit with drones or any other kind of bombs any oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz. There you go. You've just hit 30% of the world's oil and gas supply and in fertilizer and numerous other items that we rely on. And their ability to do that without, frankly, even firing a gun, that is in itself an incredibly strong, war machine.
Right, and as if we needed more evidence of the interconnectivity of all of this. On the one hand, we're easing sanctions, but we're doing it because of something that's happening in Iran, halfway around the world, and it all has these ripple effects. But you're absolutely right. We've got to assure our own energy production, and there are some short-term gains to be had there, particularly in the North Sea. We've then got to go into buffers, and if you look at the strategic reserves that China have planned for and built in, we've got to start thinking like that, and then beyond those measures, start getting to better ways of producing energy, whether that's nuclear, which always gets my backing, or whether it's renewables, whatever.
But we need to have secure energy. But this is the thing, they always say, don't they, an army marches on its stomach. You've got to have those supply chains. And whether it's a war effort, a defence effort, or just a resilient economy, you need to have, as you say, those supply chains, you need to have those stores, and we have a much smaller capacity to store things like gas than many of our European allies, but we don't even use the capacity we've got, and again that makes us more vulnerable. And when you're more vulnerable, you don't have the ability to then wage, say, a hot war. Talking of which, we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, and that's one of the reasons why we're in the mess we're in right now, because, whatever the decisions the Trump government did, they didn't seem to think through the possibility, well, certainly not in the White House, the Pentagon undoubtedly would have, about the Strait of Hormuz being closed. We're told that NATO is considering a mission to unblock the Strait of Hormuz by July. What are they considering, and what can they realistically do to achieve that?
Yeah, this is really interesting, and it follows on from the sort of, let's call it, the coalition of the willing conversations that we were leading at one point, and France joined in, and the French sent their carrier strike group through into the Red Sea, and now our ships there too. So there is an aggregation of the world's thinking and the world's ships, because the two are connected in this case, and one will follow on from the other. What will they do remains the exam question for me, and I have no real better answer for that than I did, when we last spoke about this. I mean, clearly we've got the two blockades interacting and essentially stopping shipping. I think 1 or 2 per day. Iran still, I think, has the whip hand in that regard. Is the US blockade exerting sufficient pain on the Iranian economy? It's exerting a lot of pain. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But is it enough to bring them to the negotiating table? I've always thought the answer to that is probably no. And so
certainly so far.
Well, right. And how long does it have to be done for? And do we have that strategic absorption? Back to the point we made just now about we've just released sanctions on Russia because we don't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So we're in this sort of lockdown period, and there is, I fear, as the days go by this week, the march towards re-escalation is happening. I think, but partly
by the US,
the White House, because I think they perhaps lack the patience, and they're locked in. And he hates being locked in. He knows he's trapped in this. So what do you do if you're cornered, right? You lash out. And so I think the likelihood of that increases as we go. Meanwhile, to the NATO task group, the UK coalition or the willing task group, whatever it is, providing Iran is threatening ships in the Strait of Hormuz, that group of ships are not going in there. The risk is too high. Yeah. The US Navy are not in there now. They've been in there twice since this started, in and out. And on the second occasion in Project Freedom, they left under a hail of bullets and missiles. So it's not safe.
Yeah.
For it to be safe, we either have to beat Iran to the point where they cannot fire, and that's very hard to imagine because
especially with drones and
right. Or we convince them to, or China does. I mean, China sits in the crosshairs of all of this. China convinces them, in which case there's no threat. And then why do you need this big coalition of ships? Yeah. I mean, there's an ashore piece where we have to kind of convince shipping that it's free, that it's safe to go, but they'll assure themselves if there's no threat.
Yeah.
And there's a coordination piece. This is important, where thousands of ships at anchor all have to start moving, and that has to be done in a coordinated and organized fashion. Yeah. Otherwise, chaos will ensue. So there is a role for these ships, but it's a very thin sliver. And it's one of these things that once it starts moving, will move very, very quickly. And the ships will then be loitering around going, okay, what are we doing here? Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't be doing it. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be going there. In the case of HMS Dragon, this is exactly the right call. I would have sent her there a month ago.
Yeah.
But it's good. They are good discussions to be having, but the reality of the Iranian threat remains either way.
Absolutely. Really good to talk to you. Tom Sharp, OBE, former Royal Navy Commander. Thank you for that. Claire Pearson in the studio. I mean, this is the thing, how interconnected, our defence, our supply chains, our economy, politics of the world, what's something happening in the Middle East has a massive impact on our own politics.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does. And his point about energy security should be one of our major investments in this country, which we just haven't done. But also we are perilously attached to which mood Donald Trump is in.
Yeah, well, this is an issue. And the threats, the sort of obliterating the Iran. I mean, we haven't barely talked about Iran lately because there's been so much going on in domestic politics.
Yes.
Kind of leaving that, and we've had a sort of tentative ceasefire, sort of. But some of the threats, that he's still making, and the threats back from Iran, and the reality of the Gulf states facing, basically, obliterate. Well, I mean, Iran facing it, but then the assaults by Iran, they can easily take out the ability to produce oil and refine oil and desalination plants in the Middle East. At that point, all bets are off in terms of the world economy.
Absolutely catastrophic for the world's economy, and I don't think he realises quite how bad and how much it would affect the US as well. This isn't just a European problem.
No, absolutely. On happy note, 12:47 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about how the Climate Change Committee, the official advisory body for the government on climate change, say that the UK should set maximum working temperature rules in the future, and air conditioning will become unavoidable in parts of England as summer heat becomes unbearable. You know what I just heard then? Yay! We're going to get warm summers, people! Get the Barbie out! My next guest, Jim Dale, may feel rather differently. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:50 is the time. Well, the Climate Change Committee, the great and the good, the appointed, supposedly independent advisors, the government, telling them how terrible the world's going to be as we get warmer. They say that the UK should basically have to consider having air conditioning, schools, hospitals, in many other buildings. It'll become unavoidable in parts of England, particularly the summer, as summer heat becomes unbearable in the coming years due to climate change. There should even be maximum working temperature rules so that we don't have to put up with high temperatures, as we sometimes get in this studio when the aircon goes off, because climate change is going to bring about these changes. Now, this sounds really, really worrying to a lot of people, including, I imagine, my next guest. All I heard when I read these articles was, brilliant, we're going to start having nice, warm Mediterranean summers. Thank goodness for that. We get to stay in Britain for our holidays and still get sun. Let's talk about it with Jim Dale. He's a senior meteorologist at the British Weather Services and co-author of the book Surviving Extreme Weather. Good afternoon to you, Jim.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Isn't it fantastic news? Isn't it wonderful news? We're going to have warm summers.
Well, yeah, in ways, of course. We want a warm summer. We don't want a cold, wet, horrible summer.
British summer.
It's part of the equation. But the Climate Committee are not talking about warm summers that we can all enjoy. They're talking about extremes, when it does go extreme. 2022, we spoke. I was at an airport at the time and the temperature was 40 degrees, remember? I'll just give you a little taster of what happens when temperatures start moving up. So at 24 degrees today, around in London at the moment, it's 18 degrees. Okay, so no problems, probably not even in your own office. 24 degrees, your concentration levels start to drop a little bit. It's still comfortable. It's not a problem. 30 degrees, that's the pressing. That's the press by unions to say that's the point by which working in that environment becomes a real difficulty. Your concentration levels are dropping further. Your mascara is starting to run, etc., etc.
How does half of the world cope, Jim? How does much of Europe cope?
How would you cope?
How does America cope? They have air conditioning. Yay, it works. Brilliant. What's the issue?
Well, the issue is there's a couple of issues. There's a couple of issues. It's, everybody can't afford air conditioning, for one. We're behind the times as far as that's concerned.
No, we're not behind the times. We don't have air. No, Jim. We don't have air conditioning in most British homes, and we have it in offices
because it's been colder in the past.
Yes, because we haven't needed it, and when we need it, people will fit it.
Guess what, Julia? Guess what? The reason why we need it is because of climate change, man-made climate change.
The reason we will be needing it is as if summers will get warmer, as of course we are coming out of the mini ice age. I've got no issue if the climate's changed. The climate's changing. It is still utterly disputed whether it is man-made or not. But let's leave that. No, it really is.
You mentioned the ice age, Julia. You mentioned the ice age. That was it ended 20,000 years ago. Okay, what's happened in the last 20 to 30 years is unprecedented as far as temperatures are concerned.
It's not unprecedented. It's not unprecedented. We've had faster warming in many times past. Listen.
No, we haven't.
No. Okay, we can argue about that until the cows come home, because I know you don't do facts. But here's the thing. If it gets warmer as a result of climate change, it doesn't really matter whether it's man-made or natural. We have the technology to deal with it. This is the wonderful thing. This is why people can live in... In fact, you find most of the places where populations are biggest are actually in warmer climes. Spain doesn't shut down. Italy doesn't shut down. Southern states of America don't shut down because they have hot summers. They still function.
Spain does shut down. I mean, if you go to Spain, on holiday, I'm going on Friday. Find between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 5 o'clock, they have what's called a siesta. There's a good reason for that.
No,
it's too hot to work.
No, it's too hot to work in the fields, mate. But it's not too hot to work in an air-conditioned office, as most of them now do.
Let me say something. There's a better solution than air conditioners, because air conditioners add to climate change, to be honest with you. Same as AI centres, etc. We're going, it's a catch-22. We want to be going in the right direction economically, but at the same time, that comes up against climate change and what that's...
Well, yeah, but you're opposed to the Industrial Revolution as well as AI, aren't you? I mean, you think that was a disaster.
No, I don't think it's a disaster, but we're at the moment in a transition to the next industrial revolution, which is renewables, clean energy, clean air.
We've got clean air. We've got clean air. The air's never been cleaner, including in this capital city I'm sitting in. Never been clean. It has never been cleaner.
Julia, the reason for that is the Mayor of London.
No, it's not. No, it was happening long before ULEZ. Again, load of nonsense happened long before ULEZ. This is the thing. You climate change hysterics. You always want to think that everything's a disaster and we can't possibly cope. You're talking about the sort of temperatures. I mean, I heard a lady from the Climate Change Committee talking on the radio the other day about how we could have 20,000 deaths from heat in the summer. It'd be terrible. Even Spain, okay, they've got a smaller population than us, but on an average year, they don't have more than 8,000 deaths from heat. And by the way, more people, even in Africa, still die from cold than die from heat. Warmer summers, warmer winters is good for us.
2025, can you tell me how many people died of pure heat-related death?
Well, you never know 100% if it's pure heat-related because it's largely elderly and vulnerable people. It's vulnerable and elderly people. But
1,504. Those that died of cold, 1,448. So it's pretty on par. But
no, Jim. 90% of people who die from weather-related events around the world, including in our country, the whole of Europe and Africa, die from the cold. Most deaths are not. People aren't sitting there getting hypothermia and dying. People aren't sitting in the sun and getting sunburn and dying. It's the weather and how it affects their general health.
It's about productivity as well. You reach 35 degrees C.
Put the aircon on.
5 degrees F.
Put the aircon on.
Productivity levels go down by 35%.
Put the aircon on. Are you saying that American states in the south that have those temperatures, are you saying that they just have they've got higher productivity than us in higher temperatures?
I'm sure you're a well-heeled lady. Have you got air conditioning in your home?
I don't know.
You don't know. You don't. There you go. So how many of those people listening to this programme have got air conditioning that they can switch on and say, there you go?
Most people don't because we don't need it. And if we did need it, it's for 2 weeks a year and we cope. Because human beings adapt.
Summer 2025 was the warmest ever.
And we all coped, didn't we? We all coped.
Well, 1,504 people didn't.
Well, yeah, but an awful lot more didn't cope with winter either.
Sorry, I missed the last bit.
And an awful lot of people didn't cope in winter either. This is the thing. Why do you have such a low opinion of human beings and our ability to adapt to our environment? People literally pay their hard-earned money to go on holiday to enjoy the temperatures that you say we should be afraid of.
In wildfires in Malta like you did, the same thing.
I wasn't in Malta. I was in Sicily, and there were fires on the motorway. And I tell you what, the people of Sicily were remarkably unbothered by it.
I think that it's called resilience. We become resilient. Exactly. We need to move in that direction. Julia, we need to move in that direction.
Everyone get aircon. We're all going to get aircon. Jim Dell's going to pay for it.
What to do and how to do it, because we're behind the times as far as climate change and what it's going to do in the future. So yes, we have to become educated and cope with it. The humans are pretty good at that.
Yeah, we'll cope with it very well. Jim, I'm just going to say, it just must be so miserable being a climate change hysteric, because you just think everything's awful. The rest of us are going, oh, this weekend it's going to be really warm, lovely. Try and be happy. You'll have a better time in life. Jim Dell, thank you for joining us. He's from British Weather Services. Claire Pearsall. I'm a bit annoyed. I've arranged to go away on the only sodding nice weekend we're getting in Britain.
Bring me sunshine.
It's like 27, 28 degrees in the south. I mean, everyone's happy about it.
Absolutely.
Not Jim.
No. I'm going to be out garden. I'm going to be at the stables. Make sure the horses are right.
Are you sure you're going to cope though? What if you die in the heat?
I'll manage. I'll just man up.
Genuinely, it's bizarre.
Put a fan on.
I mean, genuinely, it's like, I don't have aircon, slept with a fan last summer when it was hot. Amazingly still alive. I know some people, that's because they're elderly and infirm, and actually any temperature extremes. Anyway, someone I'm sure will cope. Although I have a funny feeling, Ian Collins, do you still